most any place. I guess we are all here. Our agenda tonight is rather limited. In fact, we have no. Anyway, we should probably start with roll call. So I'll start. Eleanor.
Present.
Okay. Jennifer.
Present.
Jim. I think you're muted, Jim. I see him, but I don't hear him.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Yep.
Okay, here.
Here. I'm present. Okay, so we have all four of our members present. Ethan and Judy are here. And the agenda, the first item on the agenda, which is not supposed to come up until 7:10, is not due tonight. It's not due till the next meeting, actually, and that's DEP 313651, the LNL development proposal on Salem Street. So that's been continued to the 15th at the applicant's request. So I think we can set that aside and go on to the what is essentially listed as other business. And I would add one thing to this list, which is the communication we got from Ms. Scott today.
Oh, okay.
I'd just like to discuss that and how we best address the concerns she raises before we go too far down the road this year. So the first one of our other business is Foster's Lane, the request to purchase the town-owned lot, a town-owned lot on Foster's Lane. And
Did you want to do the minutes before? I'm sorry.
Sorry, thank you, Eleanor. I appreciate that. Approval of minutes. So we have amended minutes that Judy initially sent out. Eleanor made some changes to them and Judy resent
Oh,
those.
If we can.
Anybody have any additional changes or corrections to those minutes?
So Judy, sorry, the new ones, the clean is your edits. Let me just open. Sorry, I just got home from work about 10 minutes ago.
Essentially, Judy incorporated most, I think,
Yeah.
all of the changes you proposed to the minutes.
Okay. I think with respect to the bank, I would just, and thinking about it more, maybe we just say there was discussion around the bank. But if the edits were incorporated, give me 1 second, I apologize.
Yeah, while Eleanor's looking at that,
Yeah.
I actually didn't, I had trouble sort of following along what the changes were, because some of the parts of the minutes were highlighted, but I didn't, maybe I was looking at the wrong document for comparison, but I didn't always see changes there.
Oh, on me, my comments, they were just, I did 2 track changes. One to just, clarify what Paul said, that you guys were going to vote after I got back. And then 2, the sort of bank 100-foot buffer, the 100-foot flood area comment. So
Okay.
that was really it.
Okay, so the highlighting can be like disregarded. That's not a change.
Yes, I apologize if that was confusing.
Okay, that's fine. I just
I think
assumed there
what
was
we
a
should
change.
probably, strikes me that maybe what we probably should do is adopt some kind of convention. If we want to make changes, should we be using, is everyone reviewing these in Word, or how are we handling them? How are you
Word.
handling them? Word?
They come in Word, yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, I mean, the easiest thing to do is put on the track changes in Word and distribute them with the changes tracked, so that way everyone can see what you've changed.
Yeah, you
I
can
would
see,
suggest going forward, that be our approach.
yes, that's what I do. The yellow highlight is where there's a comment.
Ah,
I think that's what happens, you know, like I highlighted a section to look up and
ah,
then I add a comment, but the actual edit is there. And then I usually put a comment like where it occurred in the meeting or something like that.
okay,
Okay, but sorry, I meant to take off any other highlights. But yeah, it would just be the red track changes.
Okay.
okay.
Okay,
I didn't have any problem with those changes.
okay, great. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as edited.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Start with Jim,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Eleanor,
Yes,
and I vote yes. So our minutes from a previous meeting in June are adopted. And can move on to,
oh, wait a second, sorry, I realized I watched the meeting. This is, I believe, I wasn't at the meeting, but because I watched it, I can review the minutes, I can vote on the minutes. So I just want to make that clarification. Yeah.
right, I believe you're correct. And even if you didn't, we had a vote of 3 in favor. So the minutes are approved in either case. We have to find some new recruits.
Yep.
To expand our number. But easier said than done. Okay, the next item on the agenda then is Foster's Lane. That was a letter that came to us from the owners of a property on Foster's Lane. And
I have it here if you want me to share it on my
yeah,
screen.
could you share it?
Yep.
Ethan, I was just going to look it up myself to share it, but if you have it, let's go with yours. I might also ask you to bring up the appropriate map at the right time, but let's start with their request. I guess you can go to the next page.
I think the last one was the initial request.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think that's the one we need to focus on. Adjacent to 46 Foster's Lane, which is the last house on the road as you go down the road from Vernon Street to the end. It is virtually in the trees.
Did anybody go look at the parcel?
I drove by it the other day. I didn't go out and walk it at all. But
Yeah, I've walked the parcel in the area around it.
you have, okay. Which one is it then? Is it the long, narrow one adjacent to 46 Foster?
Yes.
And it's only that.
Yes.
And the land to the east of it, at least I'll take that as east based on the map, is also town land or privately held?
That is the DPW town land, yeah.
I think according to the assessor's database, this long one that his cursor is tax title, and then the next 2 are DPW cemetery.
Along with the cemetery across the road, the Forest Glade Cemetery.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the property is the old train tracks.
Right.
And that larger parcel is also listed as tax title. But I believe in our open space plan, that is the Foster's Lane Conservation Area, protected in perpetuity. Or some limited protection.
Okay.
It's one of the parcels that was on the tax title list for the commission to ask to have transferred to their
Which one?
custody.
This one we're focused on here, Judy?
That one and the large parcel.
And the large parcel as well. Okay. If the folks at 46 Foster's are interested in purchasing this to provide for conservation land, I would say we'd be better served if we move it from tax title to conservation.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, if
it'll give us a bit greater certainty about the results.
yeah, if that was the intent, yes. If it's in our open space plan, we should protect it.
Who would maintain it?
Sorry,
Who
Jim?
would maintain it under those conditions?
Nobody's maintaining it now.
No, I know, but in the future, there's a lot of water in that area. Would
It's
they have
just,
to-
it's essentially Reedy Meadow, like the remnants of Reedy Meadow after, like if you zoom back out, Ethan, for a second. Can you put on the biomap elements on there? Because you'll see there's like core habitat just on the other, and then a little bit over on Payon and stuff.
The only reason this isn't part of that is because there's a 6-lane highway going between them.
Correct. But I saw wood ducks in there all the way back. But the wetland, it's a little misleading. All right, so if you put on the screen, you'll see, I think you should see, copy pasted my thing. Biomap core, habitat components, aquatic core, and core habitat. You should see there's basically sort of, critical habitat in that area. It's just not on that parcel.
Mhm.
But what was interesting to me was just walking it. It's almost, you see that? If you just search the word biomap, are you able to, if you click the box, you should, oh, you did see it. Okay. Can you do?
Judy,
Which one do you want?
I had done a couple of them. I did the core habitat and then aquatic core. And then you might want to, you can play with the filters so you can see what's behind it.
Judy, is that the piece of land that guy wanted to buy and put the subdivision in? Is this the same place?
No, that's a different one.
Okay.
Oh, I was told a couple, like people have tried to develop down here before, but my impression, I would want Elaine to look at it. I thought the wetland was much bigger, like that's open water, and then the wetland pretty much, comes up to the road, but there was, it made me, there was kind of hummocks in there, like maybe, oh, what was that? People, the
flood hazard.
floodplain, yeah, flood hazard. And then Yeah, and I think if you get that aquatic core, you'll sort of zoom out, you would see it kind of encompassing Payon maybe too. I don't think you have that screen yet.
Well, this one here, biomap,
Yeah,
core habitat components, core.
huh, I must have had a different biomap thing on. We can go back, but it kind of loops around, like if you think of Payon Boulevard like a tennis racket, it kind of loops around the top and through into that wetland to the left of Payon Boulevard. But anyway, it was kind of hummocky. I did see some, like waste there, like a metal object deep in there. So I don't know if
Do
it
you know
was. Mhm.
Do you know where it's getting fed from? Which way the water's flowing in there? Is there a stream in there?
Oh, when I went in, it looked like, well, that back part was definitely filled with water, and then kind of closer to the road, it's sort of a depression, like a kind of like a bank, and it was definitely mucky,
Yeah.
with a lot of leaves, and the impression I had was that there's a stream, there's an intermittent stream, there's ponding, there's a lot of wetlands vegetation. But I would think it was from Reedy Meadow. And don't forget, like you have that tunnel that goes through. I don't know all the engineering involved, but there definitely was, wildlife in there.
Yeah.
And you've had it on the areas of, well, that's the part I'm a little confused about, because on the open space plan, it's listed as, let me just pull it up quick. I thought it was listed as, the manager was Conservation Commission. Just look at it. And it says conservation lands, the owner, manager's Conservation Commission, it's resource protection, it's protected in perpetuity.
I think that was in anticipation of the commission requesting it be transferred to their care and custody,
Okay,
because that was a couple of years ago when that list was done.
okay.
Never actually made that request, Judy?
The commission has not made that request, no.
Well, I guess I'd ask the question, should we do that rather than assenting to transfer to a private owner who at least initially says they will keep it in conservation?
Well,
I mean, I think.
don't have-
Go ahead, yeah, Eleanor.
you don't have much control over when it's sold.
Right. Well, I mean, if in fact
And
the
it's
open space and recreation plan that we've approved has designated this as a piece of property we want to maintain as conservation land, then it strikes me we should go back to the town manager and through Sherry and say, this is a parcel that's of interest to us that we've carried in our OSRP as a parcel that should be maintained as conservation land.
And it has clear title now.
Sorry?
And it has clear title now.
It does.
Okay.
Another reason.
And the other thing too, for stormwater and flood mitigation. Like zoom back out. I think it's helpful to kind of see the whole, not too far, to see the whole area, but that's all Reedy Meadow. And put in the flood layers too.
That whole set of houses in there looks like it
Yeah.
was once part of Reedy Meadow.
Yep, it's all flood area and they're going to be widening the highway, right? 95. So
They are.
yeah, they are.
Well,
Uh,
we've talked of it.
They've talked of it. That's the plan.
I doubt it will happen in my lifetime, Eleanor.
Okay, well, that's good. But if it did, that would put more pressure. You want to, there's a lot of water there.
It's a very wet neighborhood.
Yeah,
It looks like the houses on that loop of Payon Boulevard were all developed prior to the implementation of wetlands protection. Probably the same thing is true for some of the other houses to
yeah,
southeast, but regardless of that, it does seem like we should express our interest in maintaining that property as a parcel that is held as a piece of conservation land.
yeah. I mean, it's not easy to get to because the fence goes across the end of the road, which is a little weird. I don't know if it's to keep people out of Forest Glade Cemetery.
The other two parcels adjacent to it to its east on that side of the road are on that side of Foster Lane
Or DPW,
both,
yeah.
both DPW cemetery properties.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's an odd structure that the DPW manages cemeteries, but
Mm-hmm.
so
Should we have Elaine write a letter?
Elaine or Ethan, or ask them to collaborate.
Yeah, I'll probably work with Elaine on it or have her do it. I think the last ones that we talked about she had done and they're pretty good.
Okay.
Mhm.
If you can do that, send it back, it's circulated. I guess we have until our next meeting to approve a letter and get it to in the
Yeah.
hands of town leadership. So
Yeah.
let's move on that basis then.
Mhm. I guess my other question was, is there any history with this applicant? I mean, with this land or this owner?
I mean, the people who are asking to buy it,
Mhm. Yeah, like have they come before the commission before?
I don't have any history of it, but
Mm.
Um,
Judy, do you know, Judy or Jimmy, do either of you?
well, I think well, Judy was saying it's not what I thought it was, but
It's not the same. They've lived there for a long time, so
Yeah.
I wrote it.
no, but is it in the same area?
It is. It's right on the other
Okay.
side of that big town-owned parcel.
Okay, so as far as
It's
that
0
goes, as far as-
Foster's Lane, that giant one.
right, Foster, well, that's what I was getting, yeah. So those must be connected hydraulically in some fashion. And
Yes.
the only thing I was thinking was, if something happened and they had to go in there and maybe clean if there's a brook or clean some areas, this guy might not have the resources to do that or want to even do that. But if it was the town's property, they could just
Right,
go in and
right.
do what it takes.
Right. Right. I think that their goal is conservation. It's better to put it in conservation.
Put it into conservation under the town and
Yes.
have it designated, so designated in, can we designate it in perpetuity or are we essentially,
It is protected, I thought, in perpetuity when you put it under the care of the Conservation Commission, owned by the town, but care of Conservation Commission.
that seems like a good solution. just a question of curiosity more than anything else. The Forest Glade Cemetery area down to the south, there's most of it is in green, but some of it has this yellow or brown overlay. What's that all about?
This is the flood plain.
Oh, that's the floodplain so it comes north from
Yeah.
the street to the south across Lowell Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you put on the 2023, what is it, the aerial images too?
Mm-hmm. Like that?
Oh yeah, that's a good.
Oh, that's quite helpful, yes.
Oh, there, and you can see that aquatic area go up a little bit. Or is that your flood? No, that's still your flood, but the aquatic core kind of follows the same pattern.
Well, and you
is
can
flood,
see
yeah.
that they interact across the highway.
Yeah.
I would bet if we went out there, we'd find a culvert under the highway.
Well, there
Because-
is that train track, but it's so mucky. I was gonna walk it to see if I could walk under the highway, but it was kind of overgrown and it was definitely mucky and some trees had fallen across the tracks, but it's open for wildlife, like, you
Isn't
know.
that where the bike trail is going?
Yep,
The
it's
rail trail?
exact. Yep.
Through Reedy Meadow, yeah.
How many lifetimes out is that one, Judy?
Linfield seems to think it's pretty close. I mean, the majority of Reedy Meadow is
in
through
Linfield.
Linfield, so that's gonna be a permitting. I don't know why they go through Reedy Meadow, but
Because the railroad track does.
no, I know that, but bisecting that is once you disturb it, you can't undisturb it.
Correct.
Yes, well, and it's been disturbed, so making use of that disturbance for something like a bike path.
But
probably
it hasn't,
worst.
it hasn't been disturbed in ages, so it's over, it's gonna
It's-
change the area.
Yeah, it's quite overgrown now. It's been
Yes.
reclaimed almost.
Yeah.
Well,
like-
there's a number, well, if you read some of the information that Linfield has, they've got a whole, they've got quite a bit about all the birds that go in there, and they nest in certain parts of time of the year, and Linfield's not recommending to even have them anything down there in those occasions. There's a lot of wildlife in there. It's probably
Yes.
one of the last natural areas that we have in Wakefield. I think it's terrible to be putting a bicycle path for someone's selfish reasons that wants to just go disturb someone else or ride down the street.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it is quite submerged. So
It would appear so, yes.
they would have to put some kind of bridge or elevate it.
There was all kinds of talks. They were going to put cars on top of the railroad tracks, Eleanor.
Oh, it's so
Did you
awful.
hear?
Really?
And yeah, they were going. That was one idea. Was they were going to weld them right down to the tracks, and they'd have that walkway. It would be the width of the train. You
So
know,
they-
I can't imagine that would be a very
Yeah.
stable foundation anymore.
So they would dispose of
yeah.
trash.
Well, that's the thing. You'd never. When you bring people in, you bring trash with the. So you got to make arrangements for that.
Yeah.
Jimmy,
a lot-
I don't
Go
quite
on.
follow what you're saying. What their plan was.
They were going to put railroad cars, the flatbeds, just a flat, no box on top, just a flat platform. They were going to run them down the
Okay.
tracks and hook them together.
And
Wow.
then what, would people walk on top of them?
You'd walk on top of them.
Oh. I can't
That was one
imagine it's
idea.
gonna go anywhere.
Yeah, with railings or without railings?
They're not anywhere near designing it yet. There's this discussion.
Oh,
And
I
But
would
That'll
assume
come
that
before
one
the
would,
commission, right?
yeah,
Well, I think we had the Lowell Street part built already, right? There's one
well,
part we,
some in Wakefield is, yeah.
there's some small segments of
Yeah.
further south in the town, yes.
Yeah.
When I go bicycling, I get out of this area because all the bike trails in this area are way too discontinuous.
Hmm.
So I
You
go
know,
where the trails are actually connected.
it's a nice area to leave natural the way it is. To let the mosquitoes stay down there and the ticks and
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
else.
I'm
Don't take,
sure it's a hotbed for mosquitoes.
and you can
No.
go, if you really want, Linfield has a tower that you can go up in and observe the wetland.
That was
Um,
burned down.
Oh, it was burnt down? I
Yeah.
looked at it on a magazine. I guess
What was burned down, Eleanor?
I think so there's this part in Reedy Meadow, I'm forgetting the name. It's pretty cool, but there's like a walkway
Mhm.
where they did elevated boardwalk through the middle of the meadow, which from
was
an
in tough shape.
ecological standpoint, I don't think I would recommend now, but it's basically a dock that connects. You could probably see it somewhere on just that connects an island and maybe two islands. I think it's something called Turtle Island or whatever.
Yeah.
The amazing thing is when you're out there on the dock, you don't really feel the mosquitoes. Like you experience them more in the woods. When you're out in the water, there's so many like spring peepers and birds and other things flying around. You really don't experience the mosquitoes much. It's worth visiting.
Mhm.
Okay,
But that was where, like, there was a tower at the end of one of those islands, and that was burned down one summer by kids, and the meadow caught on fire.
Yeah, right. I remember that. Hmm. Wow.
okay.
So they decided not to put it up again.
That
Anyway,
was in Linfield.
that was Linfield.
Okay,
I guess.
well, I guess I would say let's look for the letter at our next meeting,
Mhm.
and we'll carry this over till then to take it up and act on it at that time. Anybody have anything else to add to it?
You're still talking about the Foster's Lane property, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think we've wrapped up on that, actually. And we can move to the open space and recreation plan.
Hmm.
Review edits and vote to send to town council.
So these were some of the edits we had talked about a couple meetings ago. Just put them onto paper. I'll go through them.
Okay,
It's a mix of the old ones with a couple new ones. This was an older one, just changing it to committee.
okay.
Added a few parcels to the map.
The ones that are in dark purple?
No, they're in green, but the Lowell
34
Street.
acres on Lowell Street and 2 are
Yeah.
on Lowell.
Yep,
Okay,
this was an older comment. Just revising the MBTA language after that got updated at the last town meeting.
right.
This one, it mentioned 30 acres at the vote. We just removed it because it's no longer 30 acres.
Is there any forest left?
Yeah. We
But
don't have a
it-
size for that, but
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much forest there will be left after the next year or so.
Oh, that's right, when they put in the road.
Right.
Do you want to delete that altogether?
What road?
The road through the wetlands at the Oak.
They want to put a road through the wetlands at the Voke?
Yes.
That's what
Is that
we declined to approve and
Oh, okay,
DEP.
so, yeah, this isn't happening. This is just something you're talking about?
Well, the plan is for it to happen, and DEP approved that.
guess I don't understand where it's
So-
going, is it?
It's gonna sort of weave through and among the wetlands.
It's
Coming off
gonna
of
basically
Farm
bring
Street?
traffic into the Voc from Farm Street, correct?
Yes.
Separate entrance.
It's that Ridgeline Road, Jimmy, that we spent
Okay, I thought, yeah, I
months
thought you were
dealing
talking,
with.
yeah, right, no, I thought you were talking about something else.
No,
Yeah, no, I see they've got the wattles out there, they got barrels of them. Must be getting ready to do something. I went up there for the first time since, this thing started. The buildings are huge.
yeah, it is. It is.
And it's just, the road was steep. It's nothing, no one knows about. I mean, we all saw it
Mm-hmm.
on the plans. And
Yeah, it totally changes the skyline when you hike up
Yeah.
the power line cut. You
Yeah.
used to be able
Yeah.
to see so far.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Okay,
Okay.
shall we
Keep
go
going.
on?
Yep.
yeah.
This was adding those two parcels again to this other map and then adding the Voc as well and that purple shaded part here.
Okay,
Those two parcels. So but the 200 Quantapowhat, sorry, there's the 0 Quantapowhat Parkway, which is 8 acres, is still missing.
From this map,
It's actually missing from the open space plan, like the inventory, and this map.
who owns
Um,
that, Eleanor? Is that town?
The town, according to the assessor's database,
And where is that? Is that on the northwest or I guess,
it's
talking about the end of Quantapowhat nearest the highway, is it to the left?
it's between 200, the 200, 400 Quantapowhat high
Mhm,
rise and
mhm.
the shore.
Oh, it's that shoreline parcel.
Yes, and it runs the length pretty much from kind of Colonel Connolly along the water to just before you, like to maybe 50 Quantapowhat Parkway. Just
So not quite to North Avenue, but close.
close, yep. And I mean, pretty much to the edge. And then it's about like 100 feet wide, give or take. So it's the bicycle path, like when you look
Right.
at, yeah, Mass Mapper, yeah, it's that area. So
It's a bicycle and pedestrian path across that end of the lake.
right. So that was one a resident had raised to us some months ago.
is that something you'd like to add onto this one?
If we could, if it
Yeah.
makes sense to put it there, it would be a small, I would presume based on the color, green, dark green strip, because it would be town land.
Hmm.
Am I
Do you have an
correct, Eleanor?
acreage on that?
Yes, hang on, I think it's 8 point. So I'm just pulling up my spreadsheet, 8.6 acres.
And then also add that to the inventory, you said.
Yeah. So I don't know if we have tax title information on that. I think the date on the parcel was like 1950, so I was having a hard time finding much on it. I think it just says it belongs to town council.
Okay.
But I can send you like a screenshot afterwards.
Sure. In this one, I added just to the name Weinbergen Field / Walsh Field, because
Okay.
that's what the map shows.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh, that's old. Added those two parcels to the table as well as the maps.
Mm-hmm.
Added those 3 parcels to this map.
So this one would also have to be edited to pick up the that land across the end of the lake, I guess.
Yes, yeah,
It's small, but it's a heavily used piece of property, actually.
Yeah, it's, I think, one of the biggest parcels around Lake Quannapowick.
Yeah,
And
and
long
lots
and
of people
skinny.
use it for walking.
Yep.
And bicycling.
this one, it was updating the acreage of these parcels just based on what we looked at as well as the engineer's comments. That's most of what the remainder of these were.
It, yeah, what else were his comments?
It was updating like acreage and parcels, from what they saw from ones that were owned by the town in the open space plan.
Which engineer was this? Town engineer?
Yes, yeah. So I'm not sure how close you want to look at each of these. It was the comments from them, and then I verified them as well, based on the assessor's database.
I'm willing to take your
Can we go through a little more? Sorry.
But there's a handful of them. I think when they had larger differences, it was just because of how the parcels were associated on the last plan, how they were grouped together, and then just getting more accurate data to the size of them as well.
so for example, the Hall Park parcel
Yep.
had previously been 1.28 acres and is now 6.41.
Yes, yep.
Okay. It hasn't gotten any bigger. It's just reflected it more accurately as the proper area.
Yes, correct. More accurate based on the categorization of calling it Hall Park.
Mhm. And the other one is Veterans Field.
There's a handful of them, yeah. So Vets Field changed from 3.15, so that was one where it was a small change, mostly because of just getting more accurate data as compared to 2005.
Okay. Better surveys.
Yeah, as well as just categorizing the data with the online databases too.
Ah,
This one changed from 24 to 29.
and that's the Nahant Street pit.
Yep.
Wait, hang on. Sorry. Go back to Nahant Street Pit.
It's highlighted right now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. They did not contest the Article 97.
Not that I heard of, no.
Okay, good.
So this one, it was named as a commission, but it was actually committee. So just updating that wording there. This was some of what we talked about when it came to assigning tasks to the town administrator. We changed this language at the beginning.
Mhm.
There's two parcels again. And then I'll add the Quannapowick to this map as well. Some more of that language there from before. Changing the town administrator to, I think that's recreation director.
Wait, what? Okay.
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
There. And this was just also removing town administrator, changing town administrator there, as well as there. And then this was more of the parcels. I can zoom in a little bit.
I see the first one, Forest Glade. Had been 3.8,
Oh, one
is
second.
now 36.
It was, I think it was 38
Okay,
instead of 36.
Okay. These. So these categorizations are still a little incorrect. Like we still have in places, sorry, you have to zoom in a little bit. It's easier while you have the screen up. Where you have limited protection, Article 97.
Okay, it's getting weird when I zoom in.
Yeah, that's okay. Just so I could see it.
leave it there. I
Yeah.
think at that zoom, you can get there. So what is your question, Eleanor?
Well, we had talked at the last meeting about how the protection status was not quite correct for some of these, and did the I don't Ethan I guess who has been managing this document at this point? Is it you, the consultant?
Just me, just adding the comments that we discuss here at the meetings.
Okay. So nobody went back to ask the consultant about or Judy, do you know, like the protection status? Because, Article 97 is in perpetuity. So I'm confused when we have a categorization that's Article 97 limited protection. That's contradictory.
Which parcel is that?
Hang on a second.
Ballinger Park.
And do we,
Okay.
I don't know who the owner is for Bellinger Park. Is it DPW?
I think it would be Parks and, doesn't it list it if you scroll to the left?
I think that was one that the protection should have been changed because it wasn't on there as Article 97. Like it didn't come up in it originally. So that can be changed to in perpetuity.
Okay.
I'm curious about the two. I can't see what the there's two that say in perpetuity limited and in perpetuity none, one above the other. Holland Road and Melrose Avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There
What do those mean?
There's a parcel that's owned by that's under the care of the commission and the other is tax title.
I see.
It's not all one parcel.
That's kind of, would we ever star that or?
Which one is which, Judy? Is the Holland Road the commission or?
Holland Road has parcels that are the commission
Okay,
and their tax title.
okay,
So what's confusing is it says just 2.5 acres for Holland Road. It doesn't say across other parcels. So I wouldn't have thought that you would have, it doesn't read like there are two parcels.
Can add that, like some of these other ones.
I would just make a note to check it because
just check the number of parcels and annotate it appropriately.
yeah.
Seems to be the.
Yeah.
And, okay.
This is just more updating the parcels,
Mhm.
looking closer at it.
Is there a place where the terms are defined? I was kind of having trouble finding it. Like, is it before the table or after the table?
Which terms?
You know, like in perpetuity, Article 97,
There
limited.
you are.
Oh, but we don't,
We don't say
Mention-
what in perpetuity or Article 97
Mm.
are.
yeah, we don't even say what they are. So it's not, I'm not sure it's how, we used to have a section in the old open space plan that talked about,
What these different,
protection statuses were,
Protections.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yep. And we're listing something called Article 97.
Right.
Type of grant received. I mean, that is a protection status.
So what is the purpose of including that information in the table? Like, why do we want, because that's not, I have the open space and recreation plan workbook open and they don't show this level of detail in their samples.
I think it's helpful to know because it's protected and that if you wanted to do something to it, you would need 2/3 town vote and take something, to the state. That,
actually, with Article 97, you need
With-
the state legislature to act.
yeah. So I think that's helpful to know before we get going. Like we're supposed to be the committee that has the best understanding of these land parcels through this process. So I think it's helpful to know. So we don't.
Yeah, right. I think it's helpful for us to know, but I mean, if we have questions about how accurate these are, and if it doesn't have a lot of protection too, I don't think that necessarily helps to protect it too. Or if we're unsure of the protection status.
I think if it comes to actually doing something with the land, you might take a closer look at it than just the open space plan. You might want to, they might verify the actual information or because it's more complex than just looking at this chart.
Well, I
would
think
agree
people
with you
like
there.
it is, but I think people like to know what's open space, that is kind of the key point, like in other towns, and I will send you an article about Plymouth, where land has been taken or whatever, it's because it wasn't in the open space, land was acquired through town meeting. It didn't make it into the open space plan. What was in tax title that was supposed to be put, for municipal purposes wasn't even listed on the open space plan. So there are a lot of things that happen. So I don't see the harm in listing the parcels that are protected. Because a lot of people a lot of people assume things are protected that aren't too.
So what might that look like in this chart?
Yeah, how much more do we want to go into
Yeah.
it, Eleanor? What are you suggesting?
Well, I think if you have a definitions, you should include, like you don't actually have definitions.
Well, we don't have a definition of Article 97.
Or you have a key, right? You have this, I'm just saying this as a person who deals with data all the time and a member of the public may not know what these things mean. You have a protection status. but we used to have a section in the open space plan that explained what each of these were. Maybe it's in a different section and I keep missing it.
I can look through the rest of the plan, and
Okay,
if
just
there's not
see.
something there, I could try to make a very streamlined definition.
I think there was one in the old plan.
So is protected in perpetuity, is that the same as saying it's Article 97, or that's not necessarily exactly the same concept?
I think when it says it here, it's both. There's some overlap between them, but you can have it like in perpetuity without it being Article 97, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You can have
Okay, and
things
it
that
looks
are
like this
protected
was-
in perpetuity in other ways than just Article 97 is what you're saying, Ethan.
Like if it's in conservation.
Yes, pretty much. Because perpetuity is just saying it's protected forever, essentially. That could be a whole load of reasons for that.
And it looks like it was updated, so there's no longer, I think previously the table seemed to say that the owner of these was like DPW, and it looks like that's been removed. That's been updated now.
The manager,
Yeah,
yeah, I think we talked about that before.
yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. So now it's just town across the board.
It has the owner. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know why you can't really see it, but it says owner here, and there's a
Mhm.
separate column for manager.
Yeah,
So
okay.
the owners is the same. Well, this is an inventory of town-owned land.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
all the
okay.
town.
Yeah, I think that's an improvement.
Yeah. And then I'll scroll through the rest of these.
Mm.
And some of these I had updated the number of parcels just to reflect what that was based off of. And then I added the herd school. This one wasn't on there before.
Hmm.
Now, is this correct? The state and other public land, the Northeast Metro Tech, the owner. I think the owner of that is the state, right? And the manager is the folk.
The owner's the state. I can double check that one.
For which one, Judy? I'm sorry, Jennifer?
For the Vogue.
Ethan may have it correct here because it
The
may
school-
not be owned, it may be owned by the school district rather than by the Commonwealth.
I
I
assume the
think it'd be
school
worth
district.
checking to find out.
Yeah, I think it's worth checking because of,
Yeah.
you know, the resources that are there.
Yeah.
I think the school district might be owned by the state in some capacity, but that's a good question.
Yeah, it's a multi-municipality district. So I don't know what its reporting structure would be.
And that was in there before. I hadn't touched that one or looked into that one at
Yeah.
all. These ones, I think, were just updates to the page number. Yeah, that just automatically did that.
Okay,
Oh,
There's more parcels, numbers. Like this one, for
So-
example, Maple Way Playground.
so does that 9.5 acres include Arundel Ave?
No, this is just the playground. It's also separate to the town forest. Those are
Okay.
totaled separately.
So,
Hmm.
sorry, in the inventory, did you get, what I couldn't tell is the Mill River floodplain? Is that the same as 0 New Salem Street that belongs to Town of Wakefield School?
I'll take a look. I'll just pull up that inventory since that was the last,
Okay.
the spreadsheet, you mean? Or
I wasn't sure how, you know, I had pointed out that floodplain near 154 Salem Street, 156 Salem Street, that's just to the south. It's all wetland. The assessor's database says it's owned by the school. So you think it's this, same thing, 5.5?
I can't
Okay.
picture what you're describing, but I remember looking at it.
Okay. Okay.
I'll double check that one too.
Okay.
That was an extra parcel owned by the town, you're saying?
Yeah, in the assessor's, hang on, I'll double check the assessor's database. 5.5 square acres, so that seems right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was all the changes in this one. And then I updated the inventory spreadsheet to reflect what you see here.
right. You distributed those to us too.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
The page numbering seemed a little bit off.
Yeah, I think it definitely got a little messed up through
Yeah.
editing it, but I'll look into that sort of at the end just to clean it up.
Yeah. And then, okay. Oh, sorry, my screen's off. I was trying to sneak a bite of dinner. So sorry, who was, I guess, pressing for this? Like, Paul,
What
did
was
you
that
get an
one?
email? I mean, why are we
Which-
voting on this? Are we going to vote on this tonight? Because
It's just voting whenever it's done, so it sounds like we'll revisit it next meeting.
I think
Yeah.
we're going to need to revisit it next meeting. I'd like to get it off our
Yeah.
desks though,
Steve-
Eleanor. It's only been sitting here for over a year now.
Yeah.
Steve Mayo had asked in March that it be expedited. That's where the push came from, because
Yeah.
town council was pushing it.
Can we like post it on the website and ask for comments? Because I think that was one of the comments from town council was that the subcommittee reviewing this hadn't been reconvened. And what was
That was a
originally,
comment from Ms. Scott. I don't know if it was from the council.
Ed Dombrowski said it. He thought
Okay.
the subcommittee should come back. I haven't read that email yet. But that's
I
just
can-
my recollection from watching those meetings.
I can send it to the subcommittee once the final changes are done.
And then would we post it
Yeah,
for,
post it, yeah.
and
sure.
then let people know, send us comments or whatever, because then
Do you want to do that, though? Open it back up to comments?
I think what was presented to the public in January,
Right, but it's
Well,
been
20
posted, it's been posted on the commission's website. And I
On a
mean,
continuing
but
basis?
people
I just
wouldn't
don't-
know, like people.
Right, but I don't know how you're gonna get the word out, even if it says posted. It just, I don't know where you want to, well, I guess I don't understand where you want people to be asked to comment and how long you want to keep a comment period open. I should have clarified what I was asking.
Oh, I guess for things like the bike and ped plan, they, just set a town alert, and then they had a window of, I can't remember if it was 2 weeks, 4 weeks, asked for comments.
This
And
has
I-
already been out for comment once, correct?
Nobody, we had a public forum,
Mm-hmm.
and
But
they're
there-
really,
Right, but over the last couple of years, there were 5 meetings, there were 2 public forums. There was a survey that was for, I think, 5 months. There was,
I-
all the town social media. You can have it open as long as you want. I just don't know how long you want.
I would think we'd try to condense it at this point. I mean, we are years off.
yeah. We still don't, how did it grow 100 pages between April and May?
One was PDF and one was Word. It was the conversion from PDF to Word.
Hmm.
And one didn't have the ADA attachment because there weren't any comments on it.
8A, what's
ADA.
ADA.
Oh, ADA.
Yeah, we talked about that before.
So it was essentially an artifact of the formatting, is what you're saying, Judy?
Yes.
100 page, but there's a PDF out there, or there was last week, that was 423 pages or 421 pages.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite a bit longer.
Are you saying you're missing something?
I'm saying, how did it get so much longer? Like, I can understand maybe 10 pages, but 100 pages?
Mm.
Well, it's
Think-
not like we've snuck anything in.
It must have been a combination of the ADA and the formatting, because I know I'll just go down to the ADA section. It is pretty long. Look, it starts here even.
At page 128.
Yeah. So it could have even just been a section of the ADA section that was left off.
Yeah. But I think,
And then there's a couple pages added at the end for the letters, just putting those back on the plan.
okay,
Um, letters of support from before.
yeah. I
3 or
mean,
4 pages.
I attended the public forum, and when I saw the plan, the length of it was maybe like 100 pages. And my comment in the public forum was, why is it so?
But that was one section, I think, that they presented that night. They presented it by sections.
No, I was reviewing the plan on the website, and for months, it was the shorter version without the appendices. And then I pointed that out to you, probably last fall. So I just
Right.
feel a little uncomfortable having a public forum, having something at that time posted that's, a certain length, let's say less than 150 pages, and then coming back you know, without further public input and now approving something that's over 400 pages.
I'd have to go back and look to see what was on that meeting because I know we talked about it in sections, so I don't know what was posted at that time. I mean, it wasn't, I don't know how you want to rectify that.
Well, what's a typical town process for that?
For what?
Well, you present,
Right, but if that's why I'm saying, I don't know, we had originally been presenting it in sections, so I don't know if that was just a section that was presented at that time, and that's what it could have been. But then the full plan has been up. And I don't know, I mean,
you presented a plan to the so in January 2024, there was a plan that was posted on the website that the public was able to review and attend a forum. The length of that was significantly shorter.
right, and what I'm saying is it could have been a section of the plan. I don't know without looking at that meeting. I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm not talking about the meeting, I'm talking about what was posted on the website.
Right, and
For
it may
months,
have-
okay.
Right,
So
But
just
wasn't-
from an
but what-
optics perspective,
right, but I don't know, the full plan has been up there for quite some time now.
And has
So
been
it's been-
posted on the website.
Yes, it's been publicly available.
okay, we just haven't told the public, you know,
Well, we
that we're
haven't gone out
talking
with
about it
ongoing
and said-
announcements about it, but
and said we want your input, or what do you think? Right, like at the public forum, the consultant said, we'll take your feedback and so I think the simplest thing to resolve that is to just, you know, open it up for comments. If maybe there's a different approach,
Right.
I
But what if there are all of a sudden a flood of comments from people that weren't involved at all this time, and then a massive number of changes? There's not money in the budget for that. And I don't really think it's fair at this point to rewrite the plan. If you want to rewrite the plan, then that's a different thing altogether.
Okay. Oh, we did ask at the last meeting, we agreed one of the goals should be on the action plan was protecting town forests, because there were some goals that the Conservation Commission had made going into their review of the process that didn't make it in.
has that been included, Ethan?
I don't think that was talked about recently. Town forest.
You were,
I
oh,
think
you
it
were out, Ethan.
was-
You
yeah,
were,
I think it was in, I think the May 20th meeting.
Was that talking about the letter, writing a letter to get it transferred to the commission, or is that something separate?
yeah, the thought process was we have a stated goal, right? Conservation, we want to protect this. That's been in the old open space plan. You guys said it in the meeting when you reviewed early on, let's say 22, 23. It was said to town council when Judy presented, that's our goal, but it's not listed as a goal in the plan. And so we would look foolish if we omit that and then go to town council and say, hey, by the way, we want to protect town forest and, you know, take it out of tax title, put it into protection in perpetuity. That's still not reflected in this plan. And I think I've been saying that for a long time. And
Was that part of the discussion about having Elaine work on a letter for that?
she's already done the letter. And she agreed that it made sense. It would be better to have it reflected as a goal in the plan, so then at least it's consistent. So you don't open yourself up to saying, well, you didn't put it in the plan.
Is there an appropriate place in the plan to add that then? If there is, why don't we?
What section would that be under? Eleanor, do you
It's
have
the
an idea?
action plan, but I think we should move on to other things tonight. I think
We-
before the next meeting, I can make a suggestion. I'll go back and look at your meeting minutes.
Okay, I can just take a look now, just 1 or 2 more minutes since we're on the topic.
Yeah, and I do have one more question about this plan.
Sure.
Okay, while you're looking for that, I was looking at the Melrose Avenue Conservation Area description, which it's described in a few places as having walking trails. That's right by my house. I drive past it every day. And I think that's where we did the site visit for the DPW sidewalk installation. Is that right? Melrose Avenue Conservation Area?
The corner of Oak and Melrose, yeah.
It is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
At the end of Melrose Ave, the trail starts there and it goes all the way to Maple Way.
Oh, okay. So you kind of have to walk up like to the last house on
Right.
Melrose Ave, sort of.
You can
Okay.
park right
Yeah.
on that street. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but to your point, it's really just an access point to town forest. I wouldn't call Melrose that parcel as having walking trails. It's like a knotweed forest, a knotweed
trail-
thicket.
Well, the trail goes right through. One of the trail stewards uses it all the time.
At the very back, yeah, there's a path there, but
Right, but that's the trail, right, that's the trail. There's a parcel that's under the care and custody of the commission, and then right behind it is the start of the trail.
so this is a little misleading because the parcel that's under the care and custody of the commission doesn't really have much recreational value. It,
But the location is Melrose Ave, where the trail
yes,
starts.
yes.
So that's the reference point.
Yeah, maybe that could say trail at the end of the avenue. Because I was walking around looking for it, and I actually thought I'd be like walking on someone's property to get, all the way over there to that part.
So you're suggesting that we need some better signage out there, Jennifer?
Or just saying, trail starts at the end of the avenue. Or trail accessible at the end of the avenue.
Yeah.
I think that would be useful, yes.
Yeah.
In the plan or on the ground,
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yeah, in the plan. I think
Is
if
that
that's,
one instance or is that a few? That would
well,
be-
I mean, I think it's most important. I think a place to put that would be on page 145, where it's described with a little bit of detail. Number 13, Melrose Avenue Conservation Area. I think it's on page 146 of the Word document.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking wrong.
And I guess the way I'm thinking of it is it's a small parcel. It doesn't have, like, the recreational appeal of it is that it's just a cut through to get to town forest, basically. If there was no town forest, it wouldn't have any recreational value on its own.
Oh,
Okay.
you passed it up.
Oh.
You passed it up. It's number 13.
There it is.
The trail, which starts at the end of the avenue.
The commission did have a youth council liaison a couple of years ago who went and did birding out there. He was a regular birder around town.
I believe it. I'm not sure how new that knotweed is. It might be recent, but it's quite dense.
I think it's worse than it was last year. I drive past that every day, and it was, I think there was some that was visible on the sidewalk. I wasn't on the commission yet, but I went to that sidewalk. But yeah, it's gotten worse.
That's a feature of knotweed.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to get worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's spreading around to, I mean, it hasn't totally taken over the perimeter. It's definitely like predominant on the front, on the Oak Street side of the parcel, but yeah, it's spreading to other parts and is further up Melrose Avenue too. And driving up Oak Street, I mean, you can even see, you know, you'll pass a big stand of knotweed. And then, you know, half a block or a block later, you'll see like a little tiny plant coming up. I mean, you can just kind of see it making its way up the street.
It will keep marching, yes, unfortunately. And so far, no one has a reasonable control program. Okay, can
Okay.
we move on
Keep
from
on.
this?
Yep. Oh, sorry, Ethan. Did you get that?
Yeah, this looks like one of the goals in the action plan that would fit under.
Yes. Yes.
Are you thinking of adding it as
So-
a new objective? Or adding it to
Yeah.
one?
I think it would be the protect and enhance the towns. So this is the way these are worded are a little
But we aren't going to rewrite them at this point, Eleanor.
no. I'm gonna look. I think since we're not approving this, I'd rather send language. What I struggled with is so I don't know why these goals are so written in a developy way. Like there's certainly open space you want to develop, and then there's open space you want to conserve and protect. It
What do you
probably
mean? What do you mean it's written in a developy way?
Yeah,
you know, go down.
I see what you're saying about that objective 4B, but I think 4A kind of has a separate approach to that.
So when I see, like, I like objective 4B, protect and enhance the town's natural environment to maintain its ecological functions and build resilience. You know, that I think it would fit there, but then I see, you know, I guess it's fine. Yeah, the formalized wetlands bylaw. Yes, it would fit in here along with protecting, you know, enhanced protections for Lake Quannapowitt, that type of thing, which you have.
Yeah.
so what are we adding here?
But I would be, you know, put town forest into permanent protection. Like it, I don't think this is a quick fix because you have to go back and add it to the lands of conservation interest. Same, because you have, to me, it's the equivalent of emerald necklace forest. It's got trails, it's got a lot of interesting habitat, a lot of vernal pools. So I don't know why, and I made this comment months and months ago, why that wasn't listed with conservation, lands of conservation interest. So
I see this objective here. I wonder if 4A2, I wonder if a mention of town forest there would at least be a
Yes.
good start.
yes, yes,
Add town forest and conservation areas,
yeah,
Yeah. Or town, yeah.
or town conservation areas and forests in need of,
Yeah.
etc.
perfect.
Plural,
Town
forest.
forest, yeah. That would be lowercase then. Forest.
I would protect,
Yes,
prioritize town
think-
conservation, yeah. And town,
Since
yes,
we've already got conservation area in lowercase,
Yeah.
yes.
yeah. Okay.
So putting it here makes it sound like the goal is for it to have a management plan.
That, oh, I don't want to do that. It's more protections. Like so much of our land is held in tax title. And we don't have protections for, you know, these parcels that were intended to be used for municipal purposes and that, you know, for parks. You know, that,
Yeah. It sounds like what you're describing would be like a new objective altogether, which we can work on between the meetings.
Yeah, it's most similar to 4B number 2.
Hmm.
But it, you know, even there, I mean, this just says essentially come up with a list.
yeah, it's not,
Yeah. Or
Right,
something
it's
like this
sort of-
one, the last one, talking about acquisition. You could make something like
Yes.
that for the town forest.
yeah, including, you know, permanent protection for town forest and other
Mm.
articles of interest. You know, I can connect with you between the meetings if you want.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we should try to make this next meeting our last one going through
Yeah,
this.
yep, I agree. And then the rare species, that list is updated and expanded.
Where are we talking about?
Sorry, I was just. There's a section in the plan where we list the rare species in Wakefield.
Okay.
Section 5, it's weird because it's separated between plants and animals. But there's new data, so you can just leave a note to update it and grab the latest information. It's updated in 24.
This one.
Yeah.
So there's been more recent additions to this table.
Yeah. Yep. And
So there's a new rare species viewer for Mass Wildlife.
yes,
2024. Okay.
yes.
All right. Given that we're,
Yeah, and then the plant and there's definitely one new one from the plant.
okay.
So that's
I think
5.
they're
So we'll
all
just leave it.
plants so far.
Yeah, and the whippoorwill got accepted. So that's on the list now. Okay,
All right.
thank you, Ethan. That was helpful to have the track changes in the comments.
Anything else on open space and recreation plan at this point?
Not for me, no.
Okay.
From me.
I
And
would suggest that folks make any additional edits and send them on to Ethan in the next week so that he can incorporate them and we can have it back to completely finish and approve next time.
okay, and
Yes.
well, I guess with the concerns that were brought up in the residents' letter, yeah, how do you guys feel about addressing that?
Ms. Scott's letter?
Yeah,
Which specific concerns are you referring to?
I guess I think maybe we'll save that for other business. Let's do that.
Okay. The next one would be then moving on to the wetland bylaw and presentation. We need to wrap that because we have a presentation on the 8th,
Mhm.
which is limited to a 15-minute window, as I understand it. So
Okay.
we're not going to be able to do 34 slides,
Mhm.
much less 84 or whatever
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
large number is.
right. I think, yeah, I sent some edited slides around. I think it totals 40, but they don't, I wouldn't even say it has to be like a slide a minute. I mean, some of them can be really fast, like 15 seconds.
We would have to do 2 slides a minute to get through this,
Mhm.
which I'm not
So-
betting we can manage.
I think, I was going through, I think there's a lot of good information. But having talked to some of the planning board members, I think we just need to make it more high level.
What's our
And
objective at this meeting?
in my mind, and I'm a little, I guess, puzzled. I guess my approach would be, because they've already seen our draft bylaw that's been posted on the website. That was, we incorporated the edits from our Tom Mullen. We talk. They have that. We go through our objectives. They know what the Wetlands Protection Act is. They know the zoning bylaws. We focus on the goals we want to achieve, the 25-foot setback, protections for vernal pools. We ask their input. I think we also want to understand what things as a planning board they're looking at when they look at a project. I think it was very helpful for me to actually watch their hearings on a project that we're doing at the same time, 154 Salem Street, because they asked very similar projects and they have requirements from a planning perspective, such as, how much undeveloped space you leave on a parcel.
Have to leave on a parcel.
Correct. And so having these, and during the presentation, they kept referring to the 25-foot no disturb area. So I think we just want to understand their level of appetite and support for this. If there's anything they're uncomfortable, and we're just getting feedback at this point.
Okay, then we should think about how we edit this down to that. Because I don't think we want to go in with even the larger or the smaller set of slides.
Yeah,
Are you
I mean,
planning on attending?
I do think it's currently sort of designed for like a lay audience, like the community, the public, for like
Right,
more
exactly.
like a public
That's what it
hearing,
seems to
right?
be set up for.
Yeah. I mean, definitely the definitions can be removed, or at least kind of temporarily removed, or even just skipped over. And if anyone wants to see it, we can pause on it.
I guess I would, I wouldn't even get into the definitions at this point, like make sure they're kind of good on concept, because they're going to read through the bylaw itself. So there's no, we can speak to certain things, but it's really, why are we, what's the purpose? Why are we, what's the need to pass a bylaw now? How will it be different from the state? How do we compare to other towns? What are the things that are different? The vernal pools, like we really need feedback on the isolated wetlands.
Essentially, what you're suggesting, Eleanor, is we sort of start in about slide 7, which has the what would a local wetlands bylaws do?
Yeah,
Wetlands bylaw do.
yeah.
And it says 1 of 3, but it's actually one of about 7 or 8 because it pulls in multiple slides following.
Yeah.
Well, it does three things. It expands the resource areas, it expands the protections with the setback, and it expands the entrance.
Right.
Yeah,
And those are all very appropriate things to do, and that's what we should be discussing then.
yes. I do still think we somehow want to make it a little more layman's terms, because I think some of this terminology we're using is we're familiar with it, but it means nothing to a common person. They will be familiar. So this is why they're a good first audience, because they have some familiarity. But in just looking at our presentation, I sort of thought, oh, are we giving this to other conservation commissions? Like, it's very technical.
Well, I mean, I think, and of course I reorganize this and, was sort of thinking through what's on the slide and what you actually say is different. So,
Yeah.
you're talking through it at a lay person's, or at the level of the audience.
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yes.
I have some issues still with some of this. I don't, particularly, I think some of the stuff that we're, well, let me get back to you on that. I gotta write this down first.
Okay.
Right.
Well, let me, to your point, because I, Jimmy, since you started there, I forwarded you the correspondence from Tom Mullen and also
Yeah.
from Attorney Bobrowski.
Yeah,
We have two incredibly well-respected attorneys. Attorney Bobrowski has pretty much written most of the town's bylaws in the area. And the ones he suggested for model template, we've been looking at. And we have not proposed anything crazy. Now, both of them have said you should be going for strong wetlands protections. And then you have Tom Mullen, who's defended many towns, right? He also is in favor of strong wetlands. So I think the better approach is we start with the most protective, and then as we get feedback, and this was what we talked about last February, so I'm puzzled while we're rethinking this, but the guidance.
What are you suggesting we change then, Eleanor? I mean,
I would go with what the version that we have posted on the website, that we reviewed, that Tom Mullen has commented on, and we see what people say, because it is really difficult to present, a watered down version and then come back to the public and say, oh, we want to change our setback from 25 feet to 100 feet. It's a lot easier to go out with 100 feet and say, oh, we're going to scale it back to 25 feet. Not that we're doing anything that dramatic, but
and we're pretty much at 25 feet, the way I read it.
Right. But nobody that I've shared this with who's an attorney has said any of this is unreasonable. So I don't know why we're second guessing ourselves. We're sort of.
I didn't think we were.
I did, watching the last meeting where it seemed there were a lot of doubts being expressed. And I think those are good to express the doubts, Jimmy, because I think if you're asking the question, somebody else is going to ask the question. And so I'm sorry, I'm not yelling. I'm just excited about this topic. So something I talked to Ethan about was putting again like a Word document of these questions that come up that you're raising, and that Ethan has raised, like his question about the bank, your question about isolated vegetated wetlands, and we can list the reasons why we're doing it. And then on the second column, it can be why it might not be a good idea. And then we can come back as a group and revisit, but you know, we can flag things in the bylaw that we think, ooh, we might want to think about that. But I would wait, you know, and I think we need to be prepared with good evidence and facts for the for the advantages and disadvantages, and then make a decision. But I think it would be better to do that after we've started talking to people and seeing how the public feels about our first pass.
Well, let me say this, so at least, I'll give you an example. The 1,000 square feet that you want to use for the bordering vegetated wetland. How did you come up with 1,000 square feet? I mean, what
We
is the
looked-
science that's going to support that? And I think that if you don't have the science to support it, I mean, it's like you could throw anything out there. And that, to me, you're doing people the wrong by doing that. You need to have some sound information, research it a little bit and find out what the reasons are. Why did DEP
It's-
make a vernal pool the way they did? I mean, there's statistics
Well,
behind it. And to
The
just
vernal,
and just to throw something out there, and I mean, if you know, you say, well, 1,000 square feet. Well, how did you come up with that? How do you know that you're even going to do anything positive when you don't know what you're doing?
for what isolated wetland is a jurisdictional area, right? The Wetlands Protection Act. They do talk about that. The interest and why people want to protect smaller ones is for enhanced floodwater storage. Wakefield
Well,
has a lot of water. We have a lot of parts of town that have been filled in that were all once wetland. It's something to consider. Now, the 1,000 square feet was
no,
benchmarked. You might have missed the meetings, Jimmy, where
no.
we
Yeah, but Eleanor, I really, I think it's a little bit not right the way it's going right now, as far
What
as
are you
this goes. I
suggesting,
mean, I'm
Jim?
talking, well, I just think that wording needs to be worked on that. I don't, you have to have, especially if you end up going to DEP, because they would throw that out without any, the first thing they're gonna look for is documentation, evidence of.
this
mean, how
wouldn't
do
go
you
to
know
DEP. It's a local bylaw. It doesn't go to DEP. It's a local bylaw.
I'm just saying, I know, but I'm just saying, if it had to go to DEP, would it pass their test? I don't think so, not from what I've seen in the past. I
Can we
think that
make a
we need to
strong
work
argument
on.
to the community that this is a reasonable standard? I
Well,
think
not
it's
only
more
that,
important.
you're kind of obligated to the applicant to know what you're talking about. I mean, there's reasons why one gets made a certain way than another, and they're different criteria. So I don't
Okay.
know how there's got to be a reason behind the criteria to make it work. I mean, you can't just throw something out there and say, oh, this is the pond and there's nothing in it, or there's everything dead around it, or you don't know what the effects of drying up a smaller pond is. You don't know what the temperature differences are. You don't know the vegetation. Maybe all of that's going to get negated when you build this thing and it doesn't work. And then someone has put all this money into it. And
We're trying to protect it.
you can't protect something you don't know what you're protecting. You can
Well,
say,
I think one rationale for it, I mean, I think we've decided to put a threshold on it, and
but the
so anything,
threshold,
but anything under the threshold is at less risk of flooding, say, a property if it's, filled in or built on. But I mean, we could switch to a different threshold, but at this point, we don't have any kind of basis for using any other threshold than the one we have.
that's the problem. I mean, it's like you
But-
don't have a basis for what you're doing. So
If we're looking at other town, if we're not reinventing the wheel, we're looking at esteemed attorneys who have written these bylaws, who have written, MAC templates.
How does our 1,000 square feet compare to other towns, Eleanor, at this point?
Well, the town doesn't have anything. I mean,
Which it may
the-
not apply.
what won't apply?
Well, you know, for example, on the Vogue, right? They were able to just,
Okay, I'm not asking that. I'm asking how
Right.
does our setting of 1,000 square feet compare to other
It-
towns that you've used as a model?
Can I say one thing?
Mhm.
You know, these regulations are made so that you can adapt them to your individual town. So
Right,
we don't necessarily always have to be in sync with another community. I mean, Wakefield has things that are different than other communities, and that's the things that we'd have to, you know, keep track of.
Mhm.
And so I don't see that if there's another way to word it, I'd be fine, but to just throw something out there and say, oh, it's 1,000 square feet and walk away, that's like, to me, that's insane.
I think we put definitions around that. We made it not just a puddle.
What does
Um,
it say for definition? I mean, it's not a
We're
definition.
not
it's
looking
like-
at it right now. Ethan doesn't have it up, but you know, why don't you highlight the term? But we looked at which towns protected and which ones don't. Now, Wakefield has a lot more wetland than Stoneham, right? So Stoneham may not have that. But DEP has a threshold, it's larger than 1,000, so we're applying a smaller threshold.
And we'll ask them how they feel
There's-
about. Go ahead.
Right. And we also have a waiver that says, you know, we can, in the interest of, you know, justice, you know, we can waive requirements.
Right,
Someone puts
Mm.
forward a case why it, you know, places an undue or unfair hardship on them.
yeah,
And why, you know, filling in or whatever they want to do to
Yeah.
a pond of 1,000 feet is not going to flood their own property, and you know they want to do that.
right.
Well, maybe it's not going to be all 7 interests that are affected, and most likely it would be something concerning water. But
Yeah,
I still think that I think you do like a disservice by not being able to ask that question and have an answer. And I don't
Well-
think by just saying other communities are doing it is a good way to go.
I think to your point, we probably need a more robust answer on that.
Okay.
But I don't think, you know, I think it's a sort of, you know, I think we spent a lot of time looking at other towns and
Well, that-
trying to see what was reasonable and what was not. We weren't just making stuff up on the fly and trying to add some language
Well,
to
when you
hedge
look-
it. But Jimmy, we also have the regulations. When those get written, you can fine tune things. But I mean, I'll add today. I think there's quite a few things that are hard to prove in the field, like, and that's
could a
why
buffer
people,
be 25 feet,
well,
50 feet, or 200
Yeah.
feet, for example?
yeah,
Well, yeah,
or
but don't worry, but there's people that when these regulations were made, there was people that looked at this stuff and pulled together some evidence of what they're doing. They didn't just go out there and say, dig a hole or put a rain garden into something. They put some knowledge behind it. Even look at the retention that they're doing. That's all engineered.
So
So
what
they're
are you
not doing-
suggesting, Jim, that we walk away from this?
No, not at all. I'm just saying, can't we work on the wording of that? Or at
what
least,
part? That
I don't know. I'd have to think about
you
it.
have to think about it, but we're not telling people that they have to.
I know that, Eleanor, but I'm just saying, I guess I would hate to do something to someone, make them do something that we don't even know if it's gonna work.
Okay,
I mean, it'd be nice if you had a couple of
we're not making.
engineers or scientists documentation that said, if you do this, this is gonna happen. And, I'd be fine with that. Because now I have something to stand on.
So let me give you a scenario.
Yeah,
My neighbor has a big isolated sort of ponding area in their backyard. That's large. They're
Mhm.
uphill from me. I'm
Yeah.
downhill. And my house is pretty close to them. They want to fill it in completely
yeah,
and put a pool there instead.
yeah,
So I know, water comes off their property down onto mine.
mhm,
I would think that's something the commission would want to take a look at. If an applicant had 1,000, square foot big ponding area in their backyard and they could impact another neighbor, it's holding, it's a ponding area. You have to go and look at it and determine if it's surface fed, if it's groundwater fed. There's standards. But I think, just it's an area where we want to try to enhance the protection. That's all, Jimmy. And we can probably elaborate on surface fed groundwater, but it would definitely impact me if the commission said, yeah, go ahead, fill it in.
but Eleanor, the first thing you'd be doing is pulling out your regulations that tell you what resource you're working with and how that would affect you, to see if it would affect you. You wouldn't just go out there and say, oh, you're pouring water on my yard, unless you actually were. But you go through their process. The process is already in the book. Just go through it one by one and
But if it's
see what
1,000
applies
square
and what
feet,
doesn't
Jim,
apply.
it's not protected now.
It's not protected. So
Well,
my
you don't-
neighbor,
But you'd have to determine the first thing you do is determine whether it was protected. That's step number one. Then you go to the step number two, only if step number one turned out to be positive. I mean, that's the sequence you take.
Yes. What we're trying to do
So-
is fill in a hole in that sequence because there's a rather large element of smaller wetlands
But I think
that
when
are
someone
not in any
says-
way, shape protected at this
I
point.
guess what I don't like is when you ask the question and you don't really have an answer that you could stand on and fight for. I mean, you do have to fight for this stuff when it goes to DEP, or not just this, I know this, but I'm just saying you have to be an advocate for your position. And I just think when you do that, you need to be putting out valid information that someone can depend on. Or
Okay,
at
so
least have the answer if someone like DEP asks you that kind of question.
I did look at, when reviewing the other bylaws, I looked for this information in the other bylaws and I was looking at the wrong table, an outdated version or a more limited version. So I can take a moment and see what my summary from the other bylaws was in terms of the isolated wetland size.
Mhm.
and
They range from 500 square feet at a minimum to up to like 5,000 square feet, and many do not list any limit at all, which suggests that
There's no
one of any
minimum
size could
size?
be, one of any size could be regulated. In fact,
Mhm.
most of them don't list any limit at all.
They just simply say isolated vegetated wetlands are protected.
yeah,
But when you say isolated vegetated wetlands, you're implying that there's plants in there. So what if,
yeah.
Well, there's a
What if there-
burden
what
of
if-
proof on either us to define it that way if we're saying there is, or on the applicant to show us that there aren't those plants if there isn't. But that's part of the process we're laying out here, Jim.
yeah, no, I think that's true.
Yeah,
I
are
mean-
you concerned that that we have the word plants in there and you want it to apply to all isolated wetlands?
I'm more I started looking for articles about this. We've got another week and a half. I can look. I'm gonna
Well,
study
No, it's
some
a
more
week.
of that.
we have an
Wait.
appointment at the
I-
planning board on the 8th, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So we
Eleanor,
have to
did
be
you send
prepared
that
to
email
at
to
least
everyone?
speak to this at that time.
Well, because Eleanor has an email from Tom Mullen and Dan and
Yeah, I
was
sent that to
very-
everyone. I think read through that exchange, and that kind of goes into the stream setback discussion, which I can get to. But
Mhm.
this is the planning board is the perfect group to bring that up. Like we're going in, we're suggesting, you know, just to put to Jennifer's point, we saw towns that didn't put a number, and we wanted to address your concern about protecting puddles in a parking lot.
Yeah,
And
no,
so,
no.
and so, you know,
Um,
we looked at other ones that set at 1,000, and that seemed reasonable given how dense Wakefield
Yeah.
is in places.
Well, I see, I know where you're at, and
Yeah,
I knew that was gonna be the discussion. And I have started looking for articles about it, and I would like to find something that you could. I will look to find something
Yeah.
that can support what we're doing, because I just think there's something morally wrong and not. being
What's-
I mean, I think the reality is the impact of, say, filling in a pond of a size of 1,000 square feet is gonna depend
Yeah.
entirely on where it's located and
Right.
the
Yeah.
characteristics of the site and proximity to different buildings and.
Or to other wetlands and forest areas.
mhm.
Yeah, well, that's different resources, though. All right, I'm done.
Okay, but look it up. I mean, it's good to have the pros and the cons.
Yeah.
And to understand why it would, you know, be a positive.
Yeah, Yeah.
But again, you know, these planning board members, a lot of them are engineers. They will have encountered these and architects, these issues in their profession, and so they can say, "Oh yeah, that's reasonable," or "No, that's unreasonable." And so I'd like to hear what they think.
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, you can look in their 10.53 and it lists how they did how DEP handled it. And it seems like there might be some modifications to what they did that would work. So I'll do that as well.
Okay.
Is everyone here?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do we want to go back to the presentation? We got a little off track.
Oh, yeah, the presentation. I
Mhm.
think it's too long.
Yeah.
I
For one
agree
thing.
with that. I think we're going to have to pare it down. Well, for the planning board next week, we're going to have, I would say, no more than 15, maximum 20 slides.
I think no more than 15
I would agree. That would be my
Mhm.
preference.
and probably 10. Because again, we want comments on the plan itself. So we really want to focus on what is it that we're doing that's different from the Wetlands Protection Act, and how does it compare to other towns?
Okay. Agreed.
You're presenting this to the planning board?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like you said, Eleanor, I've been sat on their meetings too, and they are very much the same as what we do. A lot of this stuff, they've already incorporated half the stuff we do
Yeah.
in the plans, which I was amazed.
Mm-hmm.
But
No.
they make it a lot easier for us because they've already done, a lot of the stuff that we normally take care of.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I think we want to be consistent. you know, we shouldn't have, if they're telling everybody they have a, like, for example, if they're telling people they need to have a 25-foot no disturb, then there's no reason why we wouldn't want to be consistent with that. If that's kind of a standard they're pushing for.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's a thoughtful group. We'll get, and I'm sure other members of the public will be there and will weigh in.
Does the
This is
planning
a-
board need to receive a copy of the slides before the meeting for their meeting materials or just review?
I would find out. I think it's more casual because it's not like a public hearing. So
They meet in
we
person at town hall, or are they like us, virtual?
they're like us. They do virtual.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's their summer slow time. So
Okay.
where they're kind of going through administrative stuff and it's quiet on the,
Okay.
yeah. So this worked out nicely. And then I think they're not convening again for a while.
So there,
Um,
this is a week from tonight, correct?
Yes. And is it only 15 minutes? Is that what's on the agenda?
What I understood.
I'll double check that.
Yeah, and is that just the presentation or is that presentation plus discussion?
I'm going to assume the former.
Yeah. They haven't put out an agenda yet, right? I'll make a note. I'll try to get more time.
Well, I mean, I would say if we get 15 minutes of presentation and then after that,
Yeah.
we have a discussion, I think that would be optimal. I don't think we want to spend an enormous amount of time putting them to sleep.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean,
Sorry,
I might
Mhm.
suggest leaving, again, you can always skip over slides in a presentation, but maybe leaving some in that would be part of a public hearing so they can sort of see what it would be presented to the public.
Mhm.
Yep.
Um,
Their posting date for the meeting next week is tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So
The
we just,
information is due to them on Thursday. So if we are going to hand them a presentation, we have to, I would presume.
I'll find out.
Okay,
Okay. Because we're presenting to them. I don't know. I'll see how it is.
Yeah. let us know.
Yep.
I assume you're planning on attending?
I guess I had thought I was going to present.
That would be fine with me because you've been in the lead on a lot of this. And I will be there to work with you on it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I just, I have to go back and double check. We have a slide. Sorry, I started going through my outline and then we got sort of sidetracked in discussion. I think a lot of these slides are good and helpful, just retweaking.
Why don't you, could I suggest that you spend some time pulling together
Yeah.
what you think would be an appropriate scale
Yeah.
of presentation, assuming 15 minutes for presentation time?
Okay,
Confirm that with them
okay,
and then pass that to all of us and we can comment back to you.
yes. I think I
But
did
it
have,
sounds like we may have to give them something by Thursday.
yeah, could be.
So we don't have a lot of time to make further changes and edits. We may want to extract slides
Yes.
and give them an extracted set.
Yeah, I think there's some tweaking we can do.
There's nothing that says you can't tweak between when you give them something and when you show up.
Oh, yeah. I do want to just make sure, like, when we do slides or eventually, just making sure like the images we're using and the material, there's like proper attribution. So if we have photos that we've just gotten off the web, it's okay for concept, but I've known people who've gone drive through the mud for this. Just really, making sure we have permission to use a photo or something like that and attributing where we got it and on that page.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of these are from Commons, some of them I think are from Google Images, some I don't know where they came from. I mean, I guess I can take some out if, I just don't know. I mean, I don't know that I'm gonna email 12 different places and ask them to.
No, for the final or whatever. I think, sorry, I'm trying to pull it up and it keeps moving away. Yeah, I'm thinking, and I think it's fine for internal. I just meant once we post it on the website and it's like a permanent link or whatever, I think that's when we just want to do a double
Wanna
check.
Be tight there, yes.
Yeah, that's all. Like, I think for purposes of this presentation or something, it's fine because it's concept. It's just anything that's going to go out there.
Yeah,
kind of
and what do
permanently.
you mean by an attribution if it comes from Commons? I don't know that it
If
requires that.
we've
Like-
taken a slide from someone,
Like,
who was it?
I think,
I was looking at one on page 27. Tonight, there are two, there's a vernal pool and it's paren XX, and then there's XX Lake Q buffer zone, and that XX is pickerel weed.
Mhm.
I think that's my photo. My
That's
photos
your
are
picture.
fine.
Okay.
So that's
Those
why
two
I
are
put in
both
my
your photos,
photos.
Eleanor?
I have to see, hang on. Which page, 27? Well, so
27 of the
I think
presentation.
this is good. Like, for example, okay, so this is good. Like, we have a diagram. That whole wetlands thing is from the Department of Environmental Protection. So perfect.
Right.
So it's things like that. If it's our own material, it's okay. Just, I like the flooding pictures Ethan got. I don't know if we have some around town or whatever, but that's a kind of silly thing that somebody can track you down and, say it's yours.
So these two photos that are in here on street flooding in Dorchester and Andover are ones that Ethan took?
No,
Or did
these
you
are
grab
from
those?
the Commons. These are
The-
from like Creative Commons.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so you can share them?
I mean, I think they're, yeah, like
Okay.
pre-available for use. Those two.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Okay, perfect. Okay.
Those two.
Okay.
Okay.
I've never
The
heard
picture
Creative
of the-
Commons.
The picture of the bandstand, I don't know. I don't necessarily think that was Creative Commons.
No, that's fine. These are our picture. Yeah, these are good. It's Wakefield. It's fine. That's good. That's all I'm saying. It's just before we, post it. I like these edits you made.
Okay, my thought would be, Eleanor, that if you make your changes to set it up as something you want to present, and assuming it's 15 minutes, leave it to your discretion to figure that part of it out.
Yeah.
And then circulate it to the rest of us so we know what you're going to say, and if we have thoughts on things, we can come back to you with them.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you'll probably have to give planning board something prior to, or by the Thursday deadline.
Yeah. I think there's some. Yeah, I think just some. I like actually what you did, Jennifer. I think some of the stuff, like summary proposed wetlands bylaw with the picture, I would actually move that up like earlier,
I would agree with that, actually.
and just,
Seems like that's an important thing to start to get on the table early. That
Ah.
and also the one that says
I'm-
why protect wetlands and their buffer areas.
Yeah. And like, I just love this, with Wakefield, sorry, I'm looking at page,
You looking at the map with green? And we're a
No.
wet island?
I think because my PDF, it's maybe page 33, it just looks funny on my screen. But it's a summary of proposed wetlands bylaw. I don't know if you want to
Okay.
share your
Yeah,
screen,
I have
Ethan.
it up.
But its wetlands are an integral part of Wakefield's natural landscape. They provide critical services, including flood protection, water quality, and wildlife habitat. The proposed bylaw would provide additional protections above the State Wetlands Protection Act, including protections for isolated wetlands, vernal pools, and would increase buffer zone protections.
Mm-hmm.
It's consistent with protections that towns in Eastern Mass have adopted. The proposed bylaw support key goals such as climate resiliency and protecting natural resources and property.
I think
That
you want
nails
to leave
it.
with
That's-
that. I don't think you want
yes.
to leave it at the end of your show.
Yeah, that's,
You may
I
want to
think,
revisit it at that point, but
yeah. Was that your contribution, Jennifer?
Yeah, I wrote that.
Yeah.
I think it's a very good summary. I just think it
Yeah.
needs to be front and
At the
center.
beginning, yeah, yeah. So I did have a question where we list. I think my inclination would be to focus on the things we know and some of the other nuances we can talk through with them. Like somewhere in here, we list 100-foot buffer for isolated wetlands. I think we're just saying it's in jurisdiction, right?
We say that in a comparison with statewide local laws, local bylaws. Buffer zone size of 100 feet.
Oh, sorry, what page slide is that on?
That's on slide 31.
I'm trying to go back. And these definitions, I actually think maybe a Word document might be easier than a ton of, and same for the FAQs.
But those aren't what you'd be presenting, right?
No. I'm just thinking that's a way to sort of reduce the size of a public presentation. You had a slide somewhere, sorry, where I was a little confused. Well, I can get with Jennifer. I mean, I can ask, maybe
Okay.
not. It's the one that's what would a local wetlands bylaw do? One of three. It's sort of out of order. It's page 7 of 14. Do you want me to share my screen?
Sure. Please do.
Sorry. There we go. Sorry. I don't know why my page won't scroll now. Sorry. That's weird. It just shut down on me. Give me a second.
There it is.
Yep. So this section, okay,
Mhm.
bordering and under. What would a local wetlands bylaw do? Isolated wetlands, including 100-foot buffer zone?
So the jurisdiction section of the bylaw, yeah, I mean, I think that has to be compared with that section of the bylaw.
Okay, so,
Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
it's listed on a list of resource areas and it says lands within 100 feet of any of the aforesaid resource areas or within 100 feet of the vernal pool.
Okay.
And I think that's something where the MAC template says that it can be considered a resource area or not, depending on, you know, the town and what they want to do. Whether the buffer is considered a resource.
okay, I guess the way it's worded, it sounds like we have 100 foot of buffer.
Well, it does say our jurisdiction says that.
So our jurisdiction,
Section 2
Okay.
jurisdiction says that adjoining lands out to a distance of 200 feet known as riverfront area, and then lands within 100 feet of any of the other resource areas, which is wetlands, marshes, wet meadows,
right, that's
or
our
within 100
jurisdiction,
feet of a vernal pool. Those are the
Yeah.
jurisdictional
Jurisdiction.
areas.
right?
Yes.
It doesn't mean you have I guess that's what I'm
We're
trying to
not,
clarify.
we're not requiring a permit for all activities.
We're saying that's our jurisdiction. I guess the way wording where it says including 100 foot buffer zone makes it sound like we're,
Well, I
We
think
can
we
think
need to be clear on whether it's a resource area, but I do think the way that it's written right now in the jurisdiction section of the bylaw, it does sound like it is a resource area because the sentence says the following resource areas, colon, and then a list, and it's on the list
right,
that
But
follows
then-
the colon.
okay,
There's actually nothing else in it that I'm seeing that. All right, so we're adding 20, we're saying 100 feet from the wetland is part of the resource area, correct? Or not?
I think that's something we have to decide
Because
on.
we also in H, in, what is that, 6H? We say at that point, that's where we actually go down to the 25 feet, the setback. Work within
Yeah.
25 feet of any resource area or a vernal pool or isolated vegetative wetland will result in alteration of the resource.
okay,
So we've got, we I think are a bit contradictory here.
yeah, so
100 feet up front and then we drop it down to 25 feet and I don't quite know how we square that circle.
I guess the way I was thinking about it was 100 feet is within within 100 feet of these resources is our jurisdiction.
Okay,
And then we're saying we want added protections of, if this meets the criteria of 20, whatever, our 25-foot setback. And if we want more for vernal pools, we have that.
okay, well then my question would be, does that mean I'm talking about 125 feet out from the vernal pool or 100 feet or 25 feet? What's our vision? What's your vision on that, Eleanor?
I thought for isolated wetlands, we were talking about 25 feet, no disturb. Like
25 feet no disturb outside of the 100-foot buffer or
No,
25
no, no,
feet
no,
no
within-
disturb within the 100-foot
That's
buffer?
from the resource, 25 feet.
a feet, yeah, from the resource, 25 feet.
Okay.
But
I
you're
think we need to-
making, yeah,
We're gonna have to be clear on that because I think we have two different numbers here that we need to reconcile.
yeah. So I probably would,
Well,
go on.
so, again, other towns usually specify 100-foot buffer zone.
Okay,
And other towns usually, the most common no disturb is a 25-foot. So, I mean, what
so
we
there's a
have,
buffer zone of 100 feet, but within that buffer zone, there's a 25-foot
no
No
disturb.
disturb.
out from the resource that's no disturb. And then
Right.
beyond that is the part of the buffer zone they could petition us
Right.
for rights to modify.
And actually, Tom Mullen suggested putting in a 50-foot, well, I'll go back and look, in this exchange, look through it, but there's talk about putting, recommending, go for the 50-foot no build. So,
That wouldn't work in a majority of the lots in Wakefield. That would preclude a large majority. I think you might have a problem with the 50-foot publicly trying to get it passed.
yeah. So, yeah, that's what was recommended for strong protections.
So I
Well,
think.
the setback from the open stream right now, which is in town bylaws, is 50 feet from the embankment, but we don't know what an embankment is, right?
Right. So I posed Judy's question about if we, I don't know what I don't want to switch gears quickly, but is there anything else to hit on this bylaw
Yes, so, I mean,
presentation? Yeah.
if we don't want to consider the buffer zone as a resource area, then this slide should probably say, regulates activities within 100-foot buffer zone.
Maybe.
Say that again.
If we don't want the buffer zone to be a resource area, then instead of saying that the resource area includes a 100-foot buffer, then that should say, the bylaw regulates activities within a 100-foot buffer zone of the resource area, which is more consistent with the Wetlands Protection Act.
Let's, I have to reread our bylaw.
I think the way the jurisdiction section is written, to me, it gives the impression that the buffer zone is a resource area, but that's essentially something that we can decide.
Okay.
If it's not a resource area, does that affect the burden of proof for work within the 25-foot setback?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Also, the figure on slide 10, the green arrows should actually be larger around those short green arrows should be larger around the isolated land subject to flooding. That should put 100-foot buffer around it.
Oh, that's what's in, okay. Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the vegetated bank.
Is isolated land subject to flooding going to have an extra 100-foot buffer? Is that what you're saying?
Let me see if I can make this bigger. Did it just disappear again?
Well, I think this, I think this is another distinction we have to make. Are we only protecting isolated vegetated wetlands, or do we want, isolated land subject to flooding to be, because I don't think we define those in the bylaw currently, or we don't define isolated land subject to flooding.
I think their performance standards already in the isolated land subject to flooding. Oh, not isolated. Okay, sorry. I thought of that as isolated wetlands.
So I think in the figure we want to use that part of the figure as isolated vegetated wetland.
We're
Which might mean-
basically enhancing the protections of isolated vegetative wetlands and vernal pools. I mean, essentially, those are the two major areas where we're stepping in, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So this figure should probably cross out isolated land subject to flooding and, put something over it, isolated vegetated wetland.
But I think this is, oh, I see. I think I would call this, like I'll go back and look. I thought when I was looking at the DEP guidance, they sort of, are you talking the terminology? Like instead of these words, isolated land subject to flooding, you would call it isolated vegetated wetlands?
I'm thinking because Judy's question is, are we going to have 100-foot buffer around isolated land subject to flooding? And I don't know that we've even considered that or fleshed that out.
I think you're right.
I thought this was the same thing as an isolated wetland.
That one's sort of like bordering lands subject to flooding, except it doesn't border anything.
Well, now I have to go back and reread 10.53, whatever it was.
Because with the BLSF, there's no buffer, so the isolated land subject to flooding, you wouldn't expect to have a buffer.
Yeah. I think it's okay because it's, I think these are the areas we just don't want people filling in, basically. Right? Because it's like flood storage.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's probably fine to do work around it, but you just don't want them to fill it.
Can we just scroll down a couple pages? to the
Yeah,
Next
yeah.
couple slides here. That's the WPA. And then now the next one, I think, describes where we are.
Yeah.
Isolated wetlands plus 100-foot buffer zone. So we're essentially putting 100-foot buffer on the isolated wetlands. Vernal pools also 100-foot buffer zone, and a 25-foot no disturb in the first 25 feet of any buffer zone. So that's essentially how we distinguish our approach from what DEP regulates currently.
Yeah, but they'd still, I guess, regulate work. It's just how much work can you do where in the
DEP does not, does DEP regulate?
they
They do not regulate work around vernal pools, do they?
only of a certain size. Well, all of this is jurisdictional. It's
Right.
how much protection, as long as you meet the performance standards, you can do it. And then, what are the performance standards?
So I think we should at least consider. This goes back to the question that came up last time about which resource areas get buffer zones, and if so what does the buffer zone do? It provides water quality, supports habitat. Isolated land subject to flooding maybe doesn't have a habitat to speak of, but do we want to protect the water quality of it? And does it even have what's in the buffer zone if it's not a vegetated wetland to begin with?
Well, isolated land subject to flooding doesn't have a buffer.
Yeah. I don't feel strongly about that one. But to go back and Okay. Yeah, so then we get into the definitions. Who has these in slide format? Like the latest, do we have like a latest PDF, or sorry,
We have
PowerPoint
a
version?
PowerPoint version. I think
Was
the one
it?
Jennifer sent around today is probably the most current, isn't it?
Okay. Oh, maybe it's just the way my application did. Was it a PDF? For some reason, I'm
Yeah,
seeing
I
it
sent
as
it
like
as
a PDF.
I sent it as a PowerPoint.
Okay, perfect. So if I download it and open it that way, I'll do that. Okay. Great. Okay. I'm not sure if the stream setback would come up. I think I had made some points in my email that could be used in the slide, which is just to show the text, like it's one sentence and what's problematic about it. You know, it's the words and then the double jurisdiction. And Judy, kicking off that question about the double billing, you know, sorry, the double fees for people, raised this question.
For
And
the zoning bylaw and the.
yeah,
wetland
yeah,
protection.
that we can't presume a general bylaw would overrule a zoning bylaw.
No, they're parallel bylaws.
Right, right. And so they, you know, they agree that it should be repealed. But their counter was you should pass a strong Wetlands Protection Act. I mean, I'm losing my thing, a bylaw.
Yeah.
Right, but
I
I think
think-
you are passing a strong one because I don't think 50 feet is at all realistic in Wakefield. And it's always deferred to the setback that the commission has imposed. So there is no purpose to the zoning bylaw. The ZBA doesn't have performance standards, doesn't have anything to review it by. The only thing they refer to is the commission's setback. So it's a lot of money for an applicant to have 25 sets of plans, the filing fees, everything, when it's just a rubber stamp of what the commission has ruled.
So we want to ask them to repeal it at some point.
Well, there would have to be a warrant article.
So it has to be a warrant article and it's 2/3
Right. And
majority. Judy, do you have the, go on?
Well,
the last
let's
time
get
was
through
Friday was
this
very
first
close.
and then we'll
Yeah,
worry
yeah,
about
I don't
that.
wanna
You
get
don't
that-
have control on that.
No, but the point, I think, what was coming up in this, like the discussion is you had 2/3 of people who passed that zoning article, the zoning bylaw.
The MBTA
original-
zoning
the
No,
bylaw.
original
no,
one?
no, this one, the stream setback, if
Oh,
we
okay.
try to repeal it, like, we might encounter challenges if we try to repeal it, but have something that's weak or, you
I
know.
don't see, but you keep
Let's-
saying,
I
I think it's something weak. I don't see 25 feet as
Something that's
weak.
perceived as weak.
But I don't think it is perceived as weak if you present it that it is an added protection. I don't think a 50-foot is at all reasonable, and I think you would have a lesser chance of passing that and trying to enforce it.
Yeah.
Because if you have a 50-foot and you're going further out than what the Wetlands Protection Act allows, then DEP could overrule your denial potentially of a notice of intent, and then you approve the wetland bylaw. So then what does the applicant do?
I
I
think what they're
suggest that that's a
saying-
what if we don't need to go
Yeah.
down to yet. Let's deal with
right.
this that we have in front of us.
Right, but I think if you don't address it, it's been kicked down the road. It puts.
And I think
Right, but it puts the homeowner in the position that they're stuck and they're subject to these fees. That's all.
Judy,
I'm
can you
saying.
find out how much, like, how that's charged? Like it, because anytime you're building something, a home, and you're near wetland, you're gonna have the building inspector and you're gonna have Conservation Commission involved.
That's right.
So there's
So the-
always
right,
like
the building
duplicate,
Right, you'll have the building.
That's
permit,
always
but
there.
right,
Yeah.
it's
the
always
zoning
there.
permit- Right, but it's the zoning permit fees I'm talking about.
It's a zoning permit fee just because you're near
You
the
have to
stream.
asking for a variance, yes. You have to go to the zoning board of appeals and make your case.
Okay,
And I think the best way to
But-
approach that right now would be to say that we would first want to pass this and then advocate for repealing the stream
That's-
setback
That's
bylaw.
right. That's right. That's
Yeah.
that's the way I think it should be.
right. So what
But-
you can,
We get ahead of ourselves if we try to do both at the
yes,
same
yes.
time.
But what, in the email, what could possibly at least be done is to clean up the language in the stream setback. That they
No,
could
get rid
consider
of it.
doing
There's
that.
no point in cleaning up the language.
Yeah,
in
get
stream
rid of it.
setback Because they have no performance standards and they don't have any background on which to judge what is a setback.
Okay.
For a
No,
stream.
we just would want to repeal it once we get this in place, but let's focus on getting this done
Okay,
and then move on to that.
okay,
Because if we try to chase that at the same time, we're going to get
yep,
torn apart by, multiple objectives.
right. I think their concern was if you didn't at least have a 50-foot setback for for a river or a stream, then the public,
I don't
may
believe
not-
that, I don't believe that at all because it has not even been applied except the last few years. So there has not been any protection that's lost. So I don't buy that argument.
okay,
I mean, remember, we're talking about 100-foot buffers,
okay,
100-foot buffers here. And we're regulating activities within the first 25 feet, but the balance of the buffer still exists.
mhm,
Well, I'll tell you something. Is this going to town meeting or not? Does this go to town
In the
meeting?
fall.
in the fall, yeah,
Okay, because you're gonna find people, on these small lots, you take 25 feet away. It's a big deal.
I
Yeah,
think you can grandfather
But
But you
houses.
chose not to grandfather it in the bylaw.
No, I'm sorry. You can grant exceptions based on you have an existing home or it was already approved before then. Like we worked with the applicants on Pheasant Wood. You remember that tiny, tiny lot where they wanted to do the addition
yeah,
and they had to go through, they would have to go through that 25-foot area to access where they were going to do the construction.
yeah.
But that's different than someone wanting
Well-
to encroach on the 25-foot to have part of their structure.
Right. In this day and age, I don't think people should be building that close to wetlands with
Right, but I
groundwater
think-
levels
But if you
rising.
look at the composition of Wakefield and
Mhm.
where a lot of houses are situated that were built before the Wetlands Protection Act, you have to have the other side there too. You need to get people who will be affected by this to weigh in on it before it's taken to town.
Right,
meeting,
so they
because
should,
that-
so we need multiple hearings. I mean, multiple, opportunities for the public to ask questions.
yes.
I don't think one meeting's enough. I don't think 2 meetings is enough.
Well, after we get through this one next week,
Yeah, we'll have a better
let's
sense.
discuss how we carry out a strategy for a broader public communication over the next couple months. Because we have when is the fall town meeting?
November.
It's
November.
usually mid-November.
All right, so we've got several months to get out there and talk to people in, various kinds of forum.
Mhm.
Okay.
I do think we should be, well, question about the repeal. So you all are talking about trying to pass the wetlands bylaw in November and then trying to do a repeal in the spring?
Yeah,
Or just a repeal later in the same November town meeting?
I would do it in the spring because the November town meeting is gonna be packed
Yeah,
with other zoning bylaw things.
all the stuff coming from the bylaw review commission, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would set it aside. And come and be clear that we'll be coming back.
Yeah.
And it's an easier lift if the town meeting has already passed
Mm-hmm.
our wetlands bylaw. You point to it and you can say, this is what should be governing. And this is superfluous. No longer necessary, and it imposes an undue burden on applicants by requiring them to file and pay fees for something that's not necessary any longer.
Okay.
But that, I would recommend that approach.
Okay.
Anything further on this?
No.
Yeah,
Oh.
so, I mean, I'm open to the idea of leaving the bylaw the same, for now in terms of the planning board presentation and what's currently on the Concom website.
Mhm.
But I do think, well, one, we spent last time talking about the language for demonstrating that a vernal pool is not a vernal pool. And I do
Mhm.
think that language will probably need to come out. And so if that comes up in the planning board meeting, which it probably won't,
Okay.
I think most likely that language, I mean, the MAC template doesn't use that language.
Okay.
I don't even know where it came from. So I think we should expect that language will come out. And I do think I think we should have some clarity on, what has a buffer and is a buffer a resource area.
Yeah.
Before the planning board meeting, do we have buffers around isolated land subject to flooding, isolated wetlands, or just isolated vegetated wetlands? And our definition actually for an isolated vegetated wetland is not very good. It just says it's not protected by the WPA.
Okay. Good points, Jennifer.
Great points.
Yeah.
I think that I have a redlined version from 626 of the bylaw.
Yeah.
Is that the one we're working from now?
That was the meeting. Oh, yes. I think that was the meeting I missed. And
Subsequent
you
to our
guys
last meeting.
made edits. And I think that's fine. But I want to go with the one that's posted on the website because I want feedback. And I think
And that's a bigger,
it still has the vernal pools. I can go back and check.
okay.
I think I put in the versions I've circulated, I would have notes where something came from
Mhm.
if it was added. So what I don't remember if it was because we started with Judy, like the draft that Judy had. If I added that language or never removed it, I'd have to go back and check.
Okay, I'm just looking at this one, and Ethan had done the edits on this one on the 26th, this
Yes.
version.
Yeah.
So, and then I made a few additions to it, which I'll circulate. Not a lot.
Yeah. I'll take a look. Again, I think it would probably be helpful to come, like if we're making a change, just kind of documenting. Because the question, if we're asking the questions, it'll come up again,
Mhm.
So we isolated wetlands, we considered 100-foot buffer, whatever. And this is why some bylaws do it, this is why we're not gonna do it, or just something like that, that we can go back to, because it gets hard to remember all these changes.
Yeah, agreed.
Hey, Paul, that version we're gonna revisit after the planning board, and we could talk about those changes as well as any that the planning board mentioned
Fine.
as
Uh,
on
Okay,
top of the.
then I won't circulate what I commented.
oh,
It's small, so
small, I'm still on the fence about the bank thing. I want to understand.
well, removing the definition from here.
Yeah, because it's such an integral part of defining a border. A border of a resource area. I think,
Well,
I think
by
we can make it
removing it, we
consistent.
just simply default to the DEP definition.
Yeah, but I think we should understand there are bylaws that overlap with the DEP, like they identify the jurisdiction or the resource area, because if bank is a resource area in the Wetlands Protection Act, it's still a resource area for us, right?
Okay,
So that's the part where I'm kind of struggling, like if you omit it altogether. We can look more. I think that's another.
I would take, Eleanor, I would take it right out, because you're working with the buffer zone is like your major change, that
Yeah, okay.
everything is evolving around that. I would work on making sure the buffer zone, the way you want to do it, is gonna work.
Yeah,
But, cause that thing has been nothing but a headache. I don't know how it got in there, and it hasn't been helpful to anyone.
You're talking about the bank?
I'm talking about just the definition of bank in our proposed bylaw, like we.
Oh, and the proposal, not in that.
we took it out.
Yeah. We took it
Not
out,
much.
and I think people would be concerned because it's being, people know what a bank is. You know what I mean? People don't know what a, mean annual water level or mean annual flood level. People know what a bank is. So even if the definition is consistent with the Wetlands Protection Act,
Yeah.
I would make the case it should be in there.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is a resource area.
Okay, well,
Am I-
it's listed as
It's there.
it's part of the BVWs.
I'm gonna stop
The
sharing
first
this.
item.
Yes, but I thought in the most recent draft, we took it out.
Well, I'm looking at our PowerPoint. And it's there. I didn't go back to
Yeah,
we just took out the definition of bank.
okay.
We did not take out the term bank.
Oh,
Yeah, we took out the definition
we-
because it was a
we-
different definition than what the.
Yeah, we
the
still
act.
have any bank, freshwater, wetland, marsh, wet meadow, etc.
I still think if we're okay. We can let see what we hear back from the public. I would think if something is defined within the Wetlands Protection Act and I know it defaults, but just to eliminate confusion over jurisdictional areas or what you can or can't do, I would leave a definition of bank. It also makes it easier to repeal the stream setback if you can point to our wetlands bylaw and say, oh, we address this term.
Okay, well,
But that's just my thought.
we
Let's
went
wait.
through this last time and we took it out. So take a look at what we took out and
Okay, I did.
think about why we should put it back.
Okay.
And, I mean, it's not carved in stone until we send it to town meeting, as I understand.
Correct.
So-
No, but that's another one where it's like, well, let's make sure we know the pros and the cons.
Okay,
Perfect. I'm going to stop sharing this. What's next on the agenda?
agents report.
So for this one, I just had that email I sent around about 200 Quantapowit. Did you guys see that one?
Yeah.
About the proposed changes?
Can you share your screen? I had a hard time reading the map. When it came through, it was illegible for me.
Sure.
You know, I know what they're putting down, they want to take out 12 trees. The only question I have is, and a lot of them, if you read what's wrong with them is they have compressed root systems from all the equipment.
Mhm.
And it seems to me they had to know before they even started the project, because they took an inventory,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that which trees were in danger right from the start, and, you know, they'd have to be replaced. So that kind of bothers me a little bit, because I think they kind of knew what they were gonna do and just spit it out now. I mean, I think when they were applying for the permit, you know, they had you know, protection around the trees and everything, so they did that all this time, and now they're gonna cut them down. Well, okay, but just replace it with something that's a little bit more substantial, I think, than what they, you know.
I think we should require more protections next time.
Yeah, with the
Yeah.
trees, they had about a dozen. Well, most of them were from the original order of conditions. There's only 2 additional removals that they were proposing here. So most of them were approved already.
And they're replacing them.
Yes. Yeah.
And Jimmy, the trees they've selected, I think, are good. They do have wildlife value.
Yeah.
I was more concerned about the filling they were going to do on the parcel that's not 200 Quantapowit.
What, 50 Quantapowit?
No, see this area in red. This is the part that's town-owned land.
Oh, yeah.
That's where I'm confused.
About what?
Well, what exactly are they proposing? This is, I guess, Jimmy, I wasn't here for this hearing. I don't think Jennifer or Paul, when this project was approved.
Yeah.
I guess I have 2 questions. Ethan, why is this, do you consider, well, maybe you want to explain what they're doing, because maybe I've misinterpreted it. But to
Sure.
me, I was interpreting that they wanted to fill, you know, what they're talking about, gentle mounding. They have huge piles of dirt that they're storing, and they need a place to put it, and they want to spread it around on town land. That's how I was interpreting it.
So they were proposing to change some of the grading, as you see in this plan, compared to what was initially approved, just to make it, I guess, flow better or provide a better aesthetic value and connectivity throughout the whole project.
But
That was the gist of this.
was the original plan to do all this, I guess, work on town land?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. But why do we think it's, I guess the part I'm having trouble understanding is, how is it a minor modification if it's in land subject to flooding next to a resource area?
Was this one within that land? I didn't think it was exactly, but
Can this, so if you so where's the part where they're putting in the culvert? Is that right here? The culvert and the extra storage?
The culvert, I think that's this one that you're talking about.
Yeah,
And are they gonna do work within this red area here?
Yes, the grading that you see in this area, that 84, 85, 86 is what they're proposing.
What is it now?
It's just a different shape, different lines.
No, but what's the elevation now?
Oh,
It's flat. There was a meadow there that they just mowed, or somebody just mowed down.
mm,
Why don't you just ask them to come in and present it?
Yeah, I would put this, I would make this a agenda item.
Well, the one with this one that was different from the infiltration basins was that it doesn't really require our approval. They're just keeping us in the loop just as a courtesy.
So this one does not require our approval?
Yes, the last one didn't explicitly require approval, but they did want it just because it was affecting that mitigation.
But, sorry, I guess. So in the original plan that was approved by the ZBA and the order of conditions for the commission, can you share where, I guess, this work is described and what they originally? I guess that's why they would come in. But that's what I'd want to understand. Like, what was the work that was approved? And then what are they exactly asking to do now? And then,
is
guess
this
I'm-
other than the 2 trees?
yeah, they want to spread, they want to fill the,
They're
They were
supposed to be-
proposing, they were proposing changing the grading slightly off of what was initially approved.
I don't know. Does
how
this map,
slightly?
how slightly? They have a lot of dirt.
Let me see if I have the original order.
I mean, I've always wanted to do a site walk on this project because having not been involved, when the order was given, it's sort of hard to go by to understand like what's actually happening.
It's difficult, even if you have the plans in front of you from the original, to figure
Mhm.
that out because there's not as much detail on those plans, at least the ones that I've been able to find in my files, as they're giving you now,
Yeah,
for example, in terms of elevations.
yeah. I guess, when I looked at it in Mass Mapper, it looked like the AE flood. I can share my screen. I did a screenshot. Well, I don't want to, I'll just tell you. It went all the way in where they were doing the work. And so I interpreted that as land subject to flooding. And so,
They're actually storing a lot of the water on the project.
Yeah,
but I think they have, so they're digging up and creating bioretention areas, right?
mhm.
Yeah,
And then I think what they're asking then is to take that dirt and spread it around
I don't
in
think
front of, that's how I'm interpreting their letter. That's why,
I don't think that's the intention.
I
I think
haven't
they're
seen that
capable of.
letter that,
okay.
So this was the plan for the trees, but it shows the grading that was approved. You see that here.
mhm.
yeah, the 2
So
trees.
it has a change in grading compared to what we see today. It was just changing the shape of it for the most part.
Yeah,
So they are going to change the grading. That was already approved in the plan initially.
So does the
Yeah.
plan So this is the part I'm also confused about. This is town land here.
And
Right, we just put it on the open
their
Uh-huh.
initial documents, Eleanor, say something to the effect of, there's any off-site improvements shown are conceptual and are to be further coordinated with the town of Wakefield.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
That
this
was
is-
back in the drawings we received in whatever year that was that we did this.
Right. And
You know, so they have that obligation.
yeah, I don't, I guess I don't, the trees I'm
But we're
okay
not
with.
the agency at this point for that. That would
Who's-
be engineering, I would think. I mean,
But
in
it-
terms of dealing with town lands along the lake.
Right, I guess my question is, well, sorry, what are they exactly doing? How much, like they usually talk about volume or how much elevation they're gonna change.
Hmm.
Right,
I
like
think-
if it's completely
they're gonna-
flat,
Well, this,
Yeah,
yeah, it's changing the elevation compared to what's there today, but compared to what is in the order of conditions, it's not changing the elevation. I don't believe it's just changing the shape of it to kind of build around the walkway and build around the little grass area in the front. Because as you can see on the plan, it has these dashes
Mhm.
is the approved grading.
Yeah.
And I think what they were looking to change was to allow it to be more cohesive with the area as well as the walkway.
So when you're looking at those dashes, they'd be kind of steep. Is that what that's?
I don't think they're very steep. It does look like that because it's such a large plan. But it seems like a very minor gradient there.
So Ethan, are you saying that it's already graded, like they already have grading variations in their plan?
It's not graded already, but they have the approval already.
From,
They just haven't done it yet.
but how do they have our approval if it says they have to coordinate it with the town
It was
in that
in the
order?
order of conditions.
Yeah, so that doesn't sound like they have,
But what is the
We're not
property
the
line showing?
enforcing entity in the town.
sorry. Well, just to get back to my original question, and maybe it's nothing and they can do this. If you pull up Mass Mapper, like that area is a flood zone, and so what I'm
Hmm.
that goes in about 100 feet,
Yes,
right? And it's zone AE. It's bordering land subject to flooding. It's
Yeah.
you know.
that's,
So I thought that was a resource area that we, regulate due to the negative impacts of, filling something like that on stormwater retention. So my question is, I guess, what did they have this in the plan before to fill that area, and how much of it? That's what and how much are they changing from that? Because I thought there were performance standards about how much you can change.
Mhm. So from what I see on Mass Mapper, that area isn't within the floodplain, but what would be more accurate is the on the ground delineations.
Wait, do you
Right.
see, can you pull down a little bit, move up?
Yeah,
No, the other way.
because on that plan,
Mhm.
the grading was a bit above the pathway. But what you see on the ground and what you might see on some of the plans would be more accurate than this.
Can you just move up a little further, like
Yep.
up along the coast? So, yeah, you see how it goes up to the parking lot and keep going?
Oh, this is starting to get off the
Yeah,
plan a
so,
little bit.
yeah. Okay.
so Ellen, are you afraid that they're filling, bordering land subject to flooding or?
Yes, that's what I'm concerned about. And again, like I thought that was our jurisdiction and something we looked at. I just wanted to understand what the original plan was that was approved and how much are they deviating from it? Because it's unclear to me. Like
Okay,
if-
so that's the real question, how much is it?
Yeah. Yeah, because if you go by, if you go by it, I can send the photos I took.
Yeah,
There's a lot of dirt already, and I'm not sure if they've even started on the bio retention swales. So there's going to be more dug up, and I assume they need to spread it around, and that's what they would be doing the grading with.
Yeah.
And so,
well, Ethan, are they doing any grading, in the floodplain area?
I don't believe so off the initial plan.
I
'Cause
mean,
what I-
even with the modifications, are the
you-
modifications in the floodplain?
not from what I've seen, because you see here the
yeah, can
The
you pull
bottom
that
of
back
this
up
one.
again?
What's that?
Sorry. Pull up the plan again.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was sharing my screen.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. And pull
Oh.
this thing first before you go down, just further down. This is a good. Sorry. Can you move further south?
Because here you see
Can you on this? Sorry.
I'm not following what you're describing.
I wanted you on this image that you're sharing, show where the
Oh.
work is going to be done, because it's hard for me to tell looking at the plan. I would like to see.
Okay. It's roughly, I guess, roughly here, sort of. Looking at the plan, I'll pull up the plan. You can see
But
the walkway on the plan.
like they're not going to impact those trees too now. Well, sorry. I think it's probably
So here's the walkway down here, and it's a good distance off from where the grading is. And as you see with the grading, it's the lowest point is the 84 foot, which is a whole foot off of the flood elevation
Mhm.
at 83 feet. It's very consistent with the elevation that was on the original order of conditions.
okay.
The biggest change is just the shaping of it.
Yeah, I would say if it's, as long as they're not working in the floodplain, it shouldn't make any difference. I wouldn't think.
Okay, so is there a way, I guess when you send these out, I guess where the grading, because I'm seeing like 88 feet elevation.
This
Which-
one, 86.
86,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
before, where it levels off to the buildings. I think
But-
consistently the base of the buildings is 86.
Yeah.
Or the ground
Uh.
elevation in front of the bases of the buildings.
Oh, I thought it was like 83.
It doesn't have any grading from what I see at the 83 foot elevation until you get further up here, which
Okay.
that's another drainage basin.
Yeah, that's one actually long drainage basin into which that spread outlet discharges.
Yeah. I see an 82.6 here, which
Right.
would be, and then an 83 here. So that's roughly where the
Mhm.
flood would be.
Okay, but then they would make it 84, 85, 86. Okay, it's like 3 feet. Okay. And then does Bill Renault review this?
I don't believe so, no.
So this is the other part that feels. um, You said in the previous condition, it had to be coordinated with the town, right? Paul?
Yes, well, that's what the drawing says,
So
Was it
then
offsite work?
for offsite work,
off-site work. That does
And
not
this-
include work on their own site.
right? This is offsite work, isn't it?
I don't know.
Because it's town property. So I would have thought Bill would have to review this.
I don't see why they would be doing work on town-owned land without approval at this point.
Can,
Can ask Bill, but I bet you I know he did inspections on the test pits when they did that.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I guess I just don't understand what work was agreed to, like the 100 feet in, like
Mhm.
from the shore all the way back towards the buildings is roughly town land. Like in that, Ethan can show it on Mass Mapper.
Yeah, but we're not gonna be able to revisit that whole,
No.
discussion, Eleanor.
No, I'm not revisiting it. I just want to understand, like, what was agreed to, what was the work that was agreed to on town land?
That
We're-
there was a
we're
lot
not-
that was agreed to, I think, on town land.
There was not a lot, right?
I was saying there was a lot, or at least
Are
a
there-
lot of different things with this related to this project.
So I don't know. I think it's helpful to see the original plan or to have Bill involved because they're regrading.
You know, I can't imagine, Eleanor, that they haven't communicated with, they've already sorted this out, you know what I'm saying? What exactly did they say in the letter, Ethan?
I'll share it my screen in a sec.
I think to Judy's point, it might be easier to just have them come in and present and
I could definitely ask them to present, but they understand that it doesn't require approval.
but why doesn't it require approve? Like, this is the part I don't understand. Paul just read the order said, Paul, can you read that part again? Offsite work will be coordinated
That's
with the
not
town.
the order, Eleanor. That's on one of the drawings.
Okay,
Yeah.
Note,
okay,
any off-site improvements shown are conceptual and are to be further coordinate with the town of Wakefield. But
Yeah.
this is a drawing, not an order, and this is by Copley Wolf Design Group.
Yeah, no,
okay.
they've coordinated with.
They're just saying the
Yeah, this
drawing's
is-
not official until it's
Drawing's
approved.
not official,
Okay.
and they will coordinate with the town for any work that's being done. But it's not it's not a requirement for approval.
You know, it sounds like this is kind of the artsy thing where they're gonna be doing is with the, with the dirt and make it look attractive. I'm sure it's not changing anything with,
Flood storage or
Coordinate.
anything like that.
cloud storage. Yeah, I can't imagine Bill would be. I mean, you can ask Bill if he's looked at it. We could always do that.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, Ethan, I would just share it with him and just make sure he's okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not trying to be difficult. Just walking into a project late, and I don't think I've ever seen another project come before you where the applicant is working on their own site, but then doing a lot of changes to town land, and I've
Mhm.
never seen that pointed out in any agreement. And I think that
Yeah.
would be helpful so that we understand it better.
Well,
Yeah. And any problems that cause any impacts to the wetlands, they'd still be accountable as they always would be. So they understand that they can't impact anything and or go beyond their reach with something like this.
Yeah,
I'd be interested in seeing the, you know, the order of conditions for the project, you know, because I'm curious what the special conditions were, or additional conditions, given that they were planning to work on town land.
Yeah, well, don't forget now, the plans are part of the agreement, you know, and even with conservation, so. Uh, uh, just keep in mind that that's part of it.
I,
Yeah,
I,
there likely
we,
wasn't conditions outlining this part, but yeah, when you approve the plans, it gets
it's the
approved with the order.
plans that are the governing document. You're right. I mean, we weren't going to, and I was a newbie at the time this one came through, but
Newbie, you're a newbie?
Mhm.
back then
Hmm.
I was. Now, except for you, I'm the senior member, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, lucky you.
Yeah, right. But, you know, the reality is that um we aren't in a position to be able to have them do anything other than submit the plans as which become part of, once they're reviewed and we've agreed to what they're going to do, they become part of the OOC.
Mhm.
I mean, that's fundamentally how it'll all work.
Mhm.
Has worked. Not only for this one, but for the others that we've dealt with that have substantial plan sets.
Do we see the orders of condition?
I
Yeah,
don't know that I have what I have
Mhm.
in my files. I just went back and looked through it. And I have
Again, it's just, sorry, the part that's weird to me is the doing work on town land, and I would never want to be in the position of being perceived to have authorized something that shouldn't have been done, and that's why I just want to understand better what the agreement was as it related to town work on the town land and what is going to happen there.
and to be honest, I was not privy to that conversation. I'm assuming the engineering department had made those decisions about how
Yeah.
they're going to review.
I
What I
think
have for the order of conditions are files from July of 2022.
Okay. I mean, that,
I have multiple files and a photo exhibit from April of 2022 that is about 46 megabytes, but that's separate.
Ethan's trying to say something.
oh, I was gonna say I think that approval on town land is kind of separate to conservation. That's a more legal thing that they do, whether it's the planning board or just a general legal thing that they cover. So I don't think it's a concern, especially at this point in the project.
But then why are
The-
they contacting the Conservation Commission?
Because this was work regulated by the order of conditions. Typically in a project, we wouldn't be having this discussion. They would just make the deviation and show us at the end, and they'd say, look, it's pretty similar to what we proposed. But because it's such a large project, they wanted to keep us in the loop and have that good relationship back and forth and give us a chance to raise any concerns if there was any.
Okay. Can you send us that document that outlines the work? Like, I don't know if it was
Yeah.
ZBA or where it would be, but somebody in town would have signed off on the work that was being done. I think that's just helpful for us to understand it, because I know I feel like I'm wasting a lot of your time because I don't, understand the fundamental arrangement that we agreed to with them.
Eleanor, why don't you, if you contact Bill, you know, just you can ask him in a general way, well, how would this be done? Or over the situation you're looking at and see what he said.
I have a really hard time contacting Bill because he and I are both super
Oh.
busy during the workday.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
can I suggest that, Ethan, do you have access to the full OOC here that you can circulate?
Yes.
I think that would be the best thing, would be for you to circulate it. And then if there are further conversations, we need the if we need to bring bring them in, we can make that decision.
Right. Like, it's just.
But I assume that this activity is probably going to proceed whether we say yes or no.
The only thing I would check though is that, since I'm feeling the rain out here, they should be prepared to take precautions if they're gonna open up the ground and expose it to rain or whatever else, you know what I'm saying? Make sure that they've got some siltation or something up wherever they're gonna work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
agreed.
Just remind them of that. I mean, they should know that, but
Yeah, to Paul's question, I think, I mean, I don't think they would just do the work because they would want to get to an agreement with us, but I think they understand that they could do the work.
Right,
without any
okay, well then
problem.
if they're willing to, if they're
Yeah.
not in a rush and can wait for us to take a look and think about it, or for them to come in and talk with us about it, then that's fine, because
Yeah,
I think
Because
that
they
would
have-
be preferable.
they have their environmental permitting and monitoring people
And-
on board too, but I
Yeah.
can ask them.
That's probably who we'll talk to.
I
Yeah,
think,
I'll ask them if they want to come in front of us.
Okay, thanks.
yeah, and then the other thing to understand is if there would be any impact to the pathway, like, oh, while they're doing construction, you can't use the townspeople can't use the pathway for 12 weeks, I'm just making something up, but I think we want to understand, what the impact is there.
mm,
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any additional matters to discuss? Ethan, anything further?
Did you want to discuss responding to Julie Scott's email?
is there another one?
Yeah, there was one that came in today. It only arrived today, and I'm guessing folks haven't had a chance to read it. I'd suggest we read it, and my own thought is Ms. Scott will never be satisfied with our responses.
I
So
don't,
we'd be in an infinite loop with her. On the other hand, I do think she asks some questions that are thoughtful, so we need to figure out a way to give her a response that doesn't put us in a position of being forever answering.
I think she raises good points, and I think if we had public comment, we wouldn't get these letters. But I think I try to avoid using people's names because I'm not sure whether when they send a letter to the commission, whether they want us to refer to them by name or not. So I just try to keep it general. Because I know from my own experience when I write town council, I don't really want my name mentioned. But I do think, anytime we have a meeting and we're reviewing materials, we should have them posted on the website.
Well, that I would agree with. In fact, that particular comment,
Well,
I wanted to suggest that we take the steps to post the meeting materials to
it's
the
just
extent they're available.
but it's unclear to me. I wanted to follow up with Sherry because some boards post absolutely nothing. Planning board posts some stuff, so it doesn't seem like there's any standard.
Okay, well, let us know what you learn.
Yeah,
I'm not sure there is a standard. I think it would be up to us to make a decision how much we want to post.
right. Well, I think, she has written a lot about the open space plan. I think if we're reviewing and approving a draft, she would have expected,
Right, but I think the way that was redlined would be confusing because there's no context explaining the changes along the way.
okay. Or well, that gets,
Right, and anyone who has a question could always call Ethan.
yeah,
question?
It's just different because like bylaw review committee, for example, will post each version of
Right,
their
but they're
draft.
doing
And
one-
they're doing one thing. But
Yeah.
other, like ZBA doesn't post anything, Board of Health doesn't post anything. Planning Board posts limited stuff. So it's,
I mean,
Question
I
is, how
think if a member,
transparent do we want to be?
I think if a member of the public is interested enough that they want to follow along, I don't know why we should make it hard for them to do that.
I don't know, but I
Um,
think for tonight's stuff, like the open space plan, the edits, I think it would be confusing to someone just reading it in that document.
I mean, I think someone who's interested enough to write us an email, you know, asking for that, I think would be able to, you know, follow along or have the right context for it, or, but, you know, I do also think that, you know, ultimately, if they have comments, you know, I guess I don't know how they want to interact with the commission. Is it only by email? You know, would they come to the meeting if we had public comments? I mean, why don't we have public comments?
I don't know that you limit public comments. If anyone who's come to a meeting before, if they had something to say, they're not discouraged from doing it.
Okay, so someone could come to the meeting and
Tom Mullen
ask
had
questions.
explicitly said he doesn't think that any public comment should be allowed.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
He had
Who
said
said
that.
that?
Tom Mullen.
Hmm.
You don't have to take public comment.
I don't
No,
agree. I
Let's,
don't,
we don't have to agree.
No, but one
Let's
thing,
not argue it out tonight
Right.
because we don't
One thing-
disagree.
one thing is we should probably be consistent, whatever we're doing. And then two, if you have somebody who's expressed interest, you know, time and time again in a particular topic, you know, just send her the copy and say, oh, this is what we're discussing tonight. And then that's the end of that.
I've never really been asked to send anything materials wise other than abutters of public hearings. So I don't really hear anything about anyone asking for materials from the other business.
I used to
I
ask,
mean, one way to deal with this would be for
Uh-huh.
us to post the background materials on our website, point people to that.
yeah,
For example, she asked for information on the Foster's Lane request to purchase.
Right, but I don't know that I've ever seen a request to purchase a lot that's any more information given than the lot number. I mean, you
okay,
can look at it and someone has requested to purchase it, so.
Well, and in this case, there's no other background information other than the fact that the people asked for it.
Right,
Yeah, I mean, and you know, we can respond that way. I mean, one way would be for Ethan to draft a response to her. But I mean, her proposed wetland bylaw and presentation discussion, is it in the meeting packet, is what she asked, or on the
No, it's
Yeah.
on-
website? The
it's posted
bylaw
on
is
the
in
website.
then on the
Yeah.
website.
yeah,
I mean, we're not going to answer this
No.
one tonight, but
no,
what I suggest is we think about how she addresses us questions and decide what we want to do with them. My own thought would be perhaps that Ethan can draft something that we take a look at our next meeting and send it back to her at that time. She may have another one for us at that point, but we'll see.
well, I
A
think,
lot of time between
There's a
responses.
lot of time between meetings, yes.
yeah, I
But
think,
we otherwise, I mean, the other option is we just can delegate to you to draft something. You and I can confer about it and we can get it out.
yeah, I
And
mean,
that's fine.
yeah, and also just a conversation. I think sometimes that's helpful. But I will say, Ethan, I used to email your predecessor and request materials that weren't posted a lot. And it didn't seem to be like a big deal. That's all.
So Paul, do you want like a draft a response and just send it to you and then
Let's do that, and then I'll
Yeah.
mark it up. Send it to me in Word. I can edit in Word easily and come back to you with my edits, and we'll get something off to her.
Sure.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
Anything further?
Not from
I'm
me.
all set.
All right,
Thank you, guys.
need a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second,
thanks, Jim. All in favor? Jennifer,
Yes.
Jim,
yes.
Eleanor,
Yes.
I vote yes. We are hereby adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank
Thanks.
you.